How's it going?
I can see if anybody has.
No, don't worry about it. It's,
Get some of the study review.
I think I left it behind at the plant when I was down there. So I need to get another one.
There you
Hello.
There, see, now you guys can see yourselves too.
Hello.
Hi, us. So Sean Jules is with us. He's from Ethicon,
Yep.
and he'll introduce himself, and he's going to get started here in a few minutes. I'll just show you his face so that way you'll know who's talking. But he said he tends to move around, so you probably won't be able to keep track of him.
Okay.
Okay. There he is.
Yeah.
And that light will be in his face the whole time.
Okay.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, first of all. Today, Wednesday, Tuesday. But, yeah, my name's Jules Doty. I'm with Ethicon. Ethicon is a division of Johnson & Johnson. J&J is a really huge company that's divided into three major divisions: pharmaceuticals, medical device, and diagnostics, which I'm a part of, and then consumer. So a lot of people know J&J through Neutrogena and Band-Aids and baby shampoo and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then I'm in the sector that most people don't know about, because I like to tell people, if you need what I'm selling, you've got bigger problems. So I've been with Ethicon 12 years, a little over 12 years, and I did spine implant sales for 5 years before that. So about 17 years, all in Albuquerque and New Mexico. My territory goes from basically I'm aligned to Cortez and Durango, and then it goes all the way down to Las Cruces, which are two good-sized hospitals down there. A lot of hospitals I'm aligned to, I don't actually go to. Tiny little 1- and 2-room ORs. If they call me, I'll help them out. I actually went to Clayton earlier in the year. And, you know, it's 4 hours from Albuquerque, so it's all day, and I had 30 minutes worth of work to do up there. So some days are kind of full with driving. What I'm going to do, and I do this because I do this for C&M as well down in Albuquerque. Brown Mackie has closed its doors, so there's one less program down there. You guys actually have a pretty robust program. You've got about the same number of students that I see at C&M. And the only difference is we take them to the plant. We've got a plant on the south end of town where we do packaging and sterilization. So we've got a meeting room, so it's kind of fun to be on your turf for a change. This will be interactive. I'm going to cover 4 major topics. I'm going to cover surgical stapling, surgical energy. I'm going to talk to you about ligation a little bit. I'm not going to go into suture. And I'm going to cover access products, trocars, variceals, that kind of thing. The reason I don't go into suture and stuff like that is, first of all, it's an enormous category. Barbed suture and topical skin adhesives like Dermabond are growing very fast. And so I'm not going to try to go into the weeds. This is here for me to kind of help you know how the products work, how to load them, how to unload them, how to assemble them, how to disassemble them, how to troubleshoot them, how to get into trouble, how to get out of trouble, and specifically how to help the people in the room, those folks who have MDs and DOs, help them get out of trouble. Because no matter how much I in-service and work with the physicians, they got a lot on their plate. They have really tiny attention spans, and it's like having an extended family. It's like having more kids. So as a general rule, I'll in-service them, we'll teach them, they'll get into surgery, and then it's like, okay, how does it work again? And usually the person that's there when I'm not there is you. If the circulator's outside of the field, they're no good to anybody. In fact, sometimes they're a weak link between me and you. So typically my job is 80% of my job is standing in the OR and giving you guys verbal guidance, just there to help and support. You may see me in the room and you'll say, what are you here for? I'm like, I'm here to make Dr. So-and-so feel good. That's exactly what I'm there to do. Sometimes Does anybody know what a heat sink is? It's a thing that can draw heat away from another source. Sometimes I'm a heat sink, meaning the doctor is irate and that's just their natural state. You know, they're just irritated. Sometimes being a rep in the room just means they get to yell at me instead of you. What's the magic word? There you go. That's great. You just had to say please. So I'm going to have you go around the room, and this eats up a little bit of time, but I'd like to get to know you a little better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here, and you're going to tell me who you are, how you came to the program, and you're going to tell me one thing about yourself that's not about your family, not about your education, not about your kids. Okay, no education, no work, no kids, none of that stuff, okay? Because those are obvious and everybody tells me and then I don't learn anything. So, who are you?
I'm Katrina.
Yeah. How'd you find the program?
Through Seminole College.
Yeah, like you were looking through the catalog and
Yeah.
did you just put it off forever and that was all that was left? Or?
No, I've always been interested.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's one thing about you that doesn't involve work, family, or education? Can be anything, can be about work, family, or education. Come on, it can be anything.
What do you like to
It can
do?
be anything. What'd you have for lunch? One person myself. What do you like on your pizza burger?
I like a lot of it.
Grilled or chopped? That's right. You know how easy that was? Now I know a little bit about you. Yeah, no, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. In fact, I was just like, oh my gosh, she's so interesting.
Thank you.
A teacher pronounced it again.
Well, with a name like Jules, I feel like I have room to.
And my mother-in-law, who's a nurse, introduced me to the program. Told me about it.
I like
chocolate, like dark, like 70% cocoa or more, or you like milk chocolate?
But not plain.
Almonds, you're in that allergy. You like the fancy, like sea salt caramel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You like all sports? Cricket? You a big cricket fan? Bowlers and batsmen and all that other stuff? Really? I watched the cricket match on TV when I was in person. Scoring is weird. They're like they have test matches that go on for like 3 days.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's super weird. So.
Actually, I never even heard about it.
Yeah.
A couple months ago. Job to take care of my grandma. She got ill, right? And their policy is and they withdraw. So, and I didn't have advisor, and I was like, no way. I would have known about that.
Yeah.
Again, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Flipped in a family thing, but that's okay because that was an important part of your story.
One thing about me, well, no, okay. I just acquired a dog here about like a couple weeks ago.
Rescue dog, breeder dog.
He's a red tick hound. Always a puppy, but Ben.
And yeah, I think people names are awesome. I think if I had a dog that was like a girl, I'd name it like Carol. So they think I was looking for my mom's Alzheimer's. Huh?
So you just got Horse Tuesday, Texas.
Huh?
His name's Ben, like, a Ben, because the
Oh,
river
like,
wraps around like a
yeah,
horse.
okay, very cool. All right.
That's like the most recent, like, thing that I've done.
No, that's fantastic. But that's a big deal, you know, because with dogs, you can't just like get up and go to Burning Man now.
Well,
You can take the dog, but you know.
I live in an apartment.
Yeah, it's big. How big will we get?
I don't know. I don't even know if I'm gonna keep him.
Well, that's children. You just keep feeding them and see what
My
happens.
mom came over and she was like, hey, I'll be back for him.
Good trick.
She found her out. She
He's
was going.
such a good dog, though. He's super smart. Like, I already taught him like 3 times. I'm like, I'm kind of okay with it, but okay if you do come back. For him.
Dan, Keegan, and Sarah.
No.
Okay, cool. You heard the instructions on this stuff, right? So the rule is, who you are, how you found the program, one thing about yourself. It's not about family, education. How are the easy part? Who are you again? See, I remember all of you. And then how'd you find the program? Well, that's an amazing way to go through life.
And here.
Excellent. I can't wait to find out what you're having for dinner. See what shows up.
See what shows up.
You know, they legalize like that.
No.
Or like a person that pretends to be your significant other, because that's a slang. Really, just so you could go undercover and, yeah, well, I'm kind of like Mr. Potato, I have glasses and I can focus on and off. I don't have this anymore. Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
But you want one with no gaps. Like mine,
Oh,
you
yeah.
fill in. I don't have any like little patchy gaps. That's great for that. Huh?
What did you like?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Um,
interesting.
The beards are just kind of disgusting, so I'm just gonna warn you. I actually use like a beard wash and some other stuff. Yeah, it's not as harsh on this.
Unless you catch anything that falls. Good and bad, I guess, right?
I used to have a coworker that would actually, he had big ones, so he put like decorations in there sometimes when certain holidays come around. He'd have like little Christmas balls in there. It was that was it. My name's Mikila. I found the program, I always liked the medical field. I have family in it as well. But I found out about the program from a friend. He had graduated and he loved it, and I was interested in it as well.
Yep.
I like helping people. And one thing about myself is I like to paint and thrift shop, and I like
So paint, you mean like renovate homes or like paint like artistic?
painting, like artistic painting. I actually entered something here.
Artist.
I do like MC Escher, but my stuff, I'm not that good.
Drawer.
I'm more of a,
Illustrator.
yeah, my stuff is more like an abstract kind of stuff.
So any good museums you've ever been to?
I remember quite a while back, I got to go to one in like New York. I had this neat stuff. There was this one painting that stuck out. It was a gold chalice, gold cup. It looked realistic. I thought it was actually like on a pedestal deal. I'll get closer and no, it's painting. It's amazing.
Do you remember how old it was?
It's an old painting. I made my stuff I work with is more acrylic, and it's I like boxes and like furniture, like a thrift shop. Oh, I like that table. Sand it down, paint it, do my whole thing on it. There's a sheriff in I think Bloomfield or Aztec that actually has, and one actually did.
Good for you. I'm going to give you a stretch goal here. If you ever get a chance, if you're ever in London, go to Tate Modern. It's this sculpture with some really cool art. It's in an old power plant. Enormous room, so they have very, very large scale installation. Tons of great museums all over America, but that's a cool one because the building's cool.
Hi, my name's Kristen. I heard about well, actually, it was kind of my plan B because I applied for nursing. I didn't get in. And so I heard about the program through Facebook of other people being in it and stuff. And I thought it was neat because I love Grey's Anatomy. So, you know, they're always in the OR.
You like the
so-
drama that happens in the locker room and the dating.
Yeah.
I just noticed how like a neurosurgeon is doing like a gallbladder, like the same doctor does all the surgeries on the show. Yeah. I'm sorry. You were saying?
And so that's how,
I can't really hear her.
And what's the thing about you?
Well, let's see. I'm obsessed with HGTV.
So if there was like an HD, if there was like a channel, okay, that was dedicated to Winnie Dogs, you'd be like,
Yeah.
it'd be like the perfect,
Like my Facebook's like Winnie Dogs.
What's the, so tell me about like why the HD?
Why the what? HGTV.
HG.
High definition of
No,
HD. So HG, so fixer upper.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Once they're listed, I prefer the original of it as the people.
Right.
The other couple that does it and the one who's pregnant now, I don't like them as much as the first couple.
Yeah, I like the first one too.
Yeah, but I do love the fixer uppers.
Yeah.
So my name she is true.
Yeah. Well, Tip is hilarious.
Yes, yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're actually believable. I think they're really good. Fundraiser. Yes.
Fundraiser. Hello, my name's Danielle. I didn't hear about the program until Shayna told me about it. And her and I had
I can't hear.
Bless you.
Thank you.
We've had lots of people go before you.
Those were all really good.
Some really interesting ones.
Volume's gone.
Feet, you have like a foot thing? Like if you dated somebody and it's like a real long second toe or something, you'd be like, ah! They have like Hobbit, like Harem toes. So like name, it's all safe, you're in the bubble. So who's somebody like an actor, celebrity, famous person? So good looking. I'm gonna throw it out there.
Probably the guy off of Bones.
Channing Tatum.
I don't remember his
Off the
name.
Bones. Oh, the guy that was also an angel and yeah. So if he was like fine right down to his ankles, but then he had like big old Frito, big old chip toenails, that would be like,
Yeah, I wear socks all the time.
okay, to the
I
socks.
socks all the
Yeah,
time.
perfect foot transplant.
Yeah. I'll have to go get pedicures once a week. It's like,
On our honeymoon, he wore shoes to bed.
I'm Colleen, and I was actually debating between
Okay.
and I was kind of leaning more towards the language. So I actually have a friend too that graduated from this program.
Quick little interlude. What was it about nursing as you started to learn about it that made you think, maybe not my cup of tea?
I have a lot of family that is a nurse, and they say they mostly have. And I would like to be with the patient for them. So I didn't really like that aspect of it.
I see. Okay, and what's the thing about you that we should all know?
And
Danielle's really gonna set the bar there for like disclosure.
I love any outdoor.
Any outdoor activity? Like digging ditches?
Okay, maybe not
Make
that.
it
Not
Like
work.
camping.
Oh.
Yeah, those kind of things.
Oh, I see. Follow-up questions to that. You just like being outside. Yeah. Where's sunscreen? Looks like you already do.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah,
Just roll next door here.
My name's Danny. I'm looking through the catalog, figuring out what I wanted to do after I left corrections for 16 years. And I'd always wanted to be involved in surgery, some aspect of the surgical field. And so when I saw the program here, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. I think I want to do that. But I love going to all kinds of different theme parks, any kind of theme park that I can get to, and
Are you like a big rides guy?
yeah,
So like Cedar Point would be like, that'd be like right up your alley.
it's one of the best
Yeah.
best in the U.S.
Anybody know what Cedar Point is? Don't tell them.
6 Points considered the roller coaster of America.
Those are
It's
capital.
the
They've got,
capital of they
but
got
they have a Superman ride. They've
Yes.
got- yeah.
they have some of the biggest roller coasters in the world.
Ohio.
Cedar Point's Sandusky, Ohio.
Yeah, they've got like 5 or 6 of their rides are like world record
Yeah.
setting crazy rides. And so going in your stomach.
And,
But yeah, like the Superman ride literally accelerates like 0 to 100 like straight up. Like it literally just shoots up and then it goes over. It goes over the top, or does it come back?
that's Top Thrill Dragster that goes over the top.
Oh, okay.
But that one's a good one too. You go from 0 to 120 in like 3.5 seconds.
Yeah.
So-
It's super quick.
It's the one where you good to be a surgical tech because then you have to go and get your stomach back.
Yeah,
At the
you left it
beginning.
at the base.
You left it at the
yeah.
base. You have to come back and have somebody put it back in.
But to give you some perspective, that as fast as that is, like a Top Fuel Dragster does like 0 to 330 in the same time. So that's crazy fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, good to know, man.
Hi, my name is Shayna. I think the fastest one though is in Florida because there's a cheetah ride there that they just made like a couple years ago.
Well, let's hope it's still there in a couple of
It is.
days.
It is.
Yeah.
That one, I'm like, that's probably the fastest. I heard that's the fastest. Yeah, I've been on it.
And you're the one that sucked Danielle into the program,
I
right?
did.
Oh, okay, very
Well,
good.
actually, I heard about it because my friend's mom was in the program when like the third class or something, or a second
Back when
class.
we had like glass hypos and make her
No,
say
from
something.
hearings,
Oh, okay.
said one.
Oh, I see.
Not
Okay.
from back in the day.
No, like from ever.
No,
Okay, all right.
yeah. So she introduced me into it, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." So then, I let Danielle know, and I was like, "Hey, this is pretty awesome." So that's what I wanted to do as well, because it's awesome.
Yes, it is. You're not done yet.
And another thing about me, I love coffee. Like right now, we're hyped up on coffee.
Yeah.
To be alive.
So you like to try different kinds of coffee drinks?
Yeah, but I love the Colombian roast, which is amazing,
Yes.
with espresso.
Excellent. Oh, so you
And-
don't just like coffee, you like coffee with some coffee in it.
Coffee with coffee. Also, what else? I love sports. I love the Raiders. I love the Spurs. I love the Arizona Diamondbacks.
You got a Raiders game? You got a Raiders game in Oakland?
No, that would be amazing.
Okay, so Raider Nation, they are nuts. I
Yeah.
have been on the subway with Raider Nation as they were coming out from the arena after a game. And I mean, it's like silver spray painted shoulder pads with spikes on them in the face. I mean, it's
That would be amazing.
yes.
I went to the San Diego Raiders game here just in December, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm not even kidding, the ratio of Raiders fans to being at home Chargers was ridiculous. It was like 2/3 Raiders to 1/3 Chargers.
So that's why it's the black hole.
the
That's
channel
the best.
like, it was so amazing. I
Yeah.
was like,
You took a sports fan and you mix them up with a juggalo, you get it. So, yeah. So.
Well, I'm not one of those.
No, I'm just saying, if anybody's in the ICP and they also happen to be in the sports, that's usually that's like the perfect love child for that. So yeah, no, that's awesome. Very cool. Coming down the home stretch.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I heard about the program looking through brochures. It was my backup plan. My plan was to apply for the dental program and this program, and then decide because I wasn't sure which to do. I really like both. But at the end, I chose surgical and didn't apply for the dental.
Gotcha.
And I like to travel. And I am a Denver Broncos fan.
Tell me a favorite place you've been and tell me a place you'd like to go.
Let's see. A place I'd like to go is New York. Favorite place I've been is Orlando.
Yeah?
Yeah, I haven't been out of the States yet.
Well, we got a big country with a lot of wonderful stuff out there. So I mean, you can. Do you like car trips, or do you like to get on a plane and just get where you're going?
Car trips.
Yeah, that's the girl. There you go.
I like to see everything, and like on the way over, I'm like, oh, let's look at this. And
Yeah, I love to
stop
pull
and
over.
go.
Anytime I see a little brown sign, I'm like, I gotta know what's going on. Seriously. I love it. I carry my camera with me everywhere.
Yeah, I like. I do a little bit of photography too.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning, so I take my camera with me everywhere, and I'm like constantly taking photos, and everyone's like, "Stop, please."
Oh, I've gotten so into it. And I now have 3 Instagram accounts. I've split it into 3 accounts so that I can, because the people that follow my regular personal account were getting tired of seeing. Some people were like, so I've now got 3 categories, and so I've got my personal stuff, and then I have all cars and motorsports, and then I have one for just cool anything I see that's the architecture or design stuff I see laying on the ground. I love that kind of stuff.
I force my family to look at all my photos.
I'm telling you, it's so much nicer than Facebook or Twitter. Nobody ever slags me on Instagram. It's all pictures. Everything's happy.
I don't have any social media, so.
I'm a little
stay
obsessed.
away
My
from it.
22-year-old is like, Dad, you post so much. And I'm like, I only post like once a day, sometimes twice. She goes, that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, my followers expect content. All 44 of them. They want to see a regular update.
My name's Ron.
Yep.
And I found out about the program. I wasn't like pursuing it at the time. My previous career kind of fizzled out.
You realize you guys are the most amazing infomercial. I can't wait to see the video that Sam Wine does for the.
Yeah.
But you know,
You guys
I had a
aren't
couple
coming
surgeries, and
to be
I
on the
thought
commercials.
surgical tech people were really cool and interesting. And I watched a couple of videos of like surgeries. I thought it was really cool. You know, I'm kind of a hands-on guy, and there's a lot of tools involved.
There are.
And it seemed cool. And anyways, I got laid off from my previous job and got the opportunity to go to school again. So it seemed like a good fit.
What was the previous job?
I was a mechanic at the mine.
Oh yeah. So like diesel, that kind of stuff, or hydraulics, or.
I guess hydraulics.
Yeah.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
What's one thing about you, man?
Oh man.
Bless you.
Laying heavy on me lately. A good friend of mine died over the weekend.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear.
Yeah, and it's just kind of sucks, you know. No longer with us.
Wow.
Bummer.
Well, on that note, and I am sorry for your loss.
Gosh.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, can you following the plan here?
Yes.
All right. So we know your name. Tell us about how you found the program, and tell us one thing about you.
I actually found the program last year. I was really interested in going in, but I had some issues with my son, so trying to get him out the house, get him graduated into the Air Force.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank goodness. And this year I came back, and I like helping people, and I like it even more that the people are asleep, you know. So, there, so that's how I found it. One thing about me, I like TV shows.
Yeah.
I'm stuck on The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, The Fosters, those kind of things there.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a show that I need. I haven't watched any of it, but I know one of these days I'm going to save up all my vacation. I'm going to binge watch it because I listened to a podcast called The Nerdist, and they've interviewed so many different people from that program.
Yes.
We just got through watching The Leftovers. Do you know what that is? It's an HBO program.
No.
So it's about like what would happen if like 2% of the world's population just disappeared all at once.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of funky. They did 3 seasons of it, and so me and my wife just finished watching that. So, but The Walking Dead's got like 9 seasons now.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, see, so I'm gonna have to like fake an injury at work or something so I can go home and so I can binge watch that. So, Well, I know it takes up about half an hour. It always takes about half an hour, whether I have 10 people or 15 people or whatever. And the reason I do it is because a couple things. First of all, now we're all friends. Now we all know a little bit something. And some folks I know are kind of thinking, what's something that's not going to come back to haunt me? But the important thing is I want to take you out of that bubble of, it's really to say, well, I have 2 kids and I do, you know. But I like it because then it kind of loosens us all up a little bit and makes it, I find that people interact more later on when I start asking you questions and stuff. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, we're going to jump into 4 categories. I would like it to be interactive. What I'm going to do, so for example, I'm going to cover stapling. I'm going to give you some basic history of it. Unfortunately, since I left my adapter or lost it or whatever, I can't really show you the pictures. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about it. We're going to talk about it a little bit. And then I'm going to have you come up. We're going to talk about how to load it, reload it. What are the most common ones you're going to see? What are the most common troubleshooting issues? What do we do with it? Why do we use a stapler instead of something else? All that stuff, okay? So how far back do you think surgical stapling goes? Like, what was roughly the first time somebody used a surgical stapler on a patient? Yeah, it's a little new. It's a little newer than that.
It's gonna be World War I.
You're a little too new. So
What did she say?
she said 1700. She said 1970s. I'm trying to look for a happy medium.
1940s.
So 1909. 1909. Nice job. So 1909. A doctor named I think he was Hungarian, Polish. His name was Huber Holtl, H-U-L-T-L, and he designed essentially the forerunner, big, heavy. So when we talk about a stapler, this is kind of the oldest version that we still make. We have a cartridge shaft that holds the staples, and then we have the anvil. An anvil just like a blacksmith. And that's where the staples are going to strike, and they're going to form that little letter V that we're going to talk about. So Holtl designed staples. What were they made out of? What kind of metal do you think they were using in 1909? No, but you're very close. Copper's kind of toxic.
Steel.
Real close. You were looking for something. What do we hear, Sean? What Sean say?
Steel?
No, silver.
Silver. Okay.
Silver is very ductile. Bends real easy. It was easy to work with. You know, a lot of the metals that we take for granted now, like aluminum and titanium and other stuff like that, they're very brittle in their natural state. They need a lot of work to become sort of springy and sort of malleable and stuff like that. So silver, and of course, we didn't know as much as we know chemically about stuff back then. Silver's probably not the ideal material because it didn't flow too easily, but that's what he used. And he had and the staples got loaded in the stapler, and then he had an anvil, and he slapped the whole thing together. And it didn't cut; it just laid down a row of staples, and that was it. And he carries on that way. It's not very common because it's not like there was an assembly line. So we come up to about 1923 or so, and we come up to a guy named Aladar von Petz, P-E-T-Z. Dr. von Petz designed essentially what will be the first relatively common stapler. Same thing. It's got a big, heavy cartridge shaft with 2 rows of pockets. It's probably about 150 millimeters long. This is 75, just to give you some sense of scale. So it's a big, long stapler, and you would really only use it if you were taking a big chunk of colon or stomach or something like that. And you, as the tech, would be there with your pickups, and you would have to put a staple in each little pocket. And the staples were big. I mean, they were big honking staples by today's standards. And you would take them out of a little cup, and you'd fill them into the little pockets, and then you would slap the thing together. There would be 2 halves of it. There was a ring that would go around the end to be like a little horse collar so that it wouldn't spread apart when you started applying compression. And there was a little handle that looked like the little twisty handle you put like on a water spout. That went on the side, and that cranked the little gears and that arm that's in the driver down. It was a pretty complicated thing, and each one was made by hand. So if a hospital had one, and by the way, they kept it in a little wooden box. I mean, it looks like an old-timey little doctor set. And so you'd get the Von Petz stapler out, and if something failed or broke, you'd have to send it back to Dr. Von Petz at his workshop, and then the machinist would repair it, fix it, weld it, whatever, and send it back to you. Okay? Still not exactly mass-produced. Then a big thing comes along, World War I and World War II, and this is where, bless you, and this is where now the need, you know, the terrible thing about war is obviously the loss of life and the destruction of property and the upheaval of families and countries and all kinds of stuff. But one of the benefits is wars always rapidly advance medical practice. They always do. And so the Russians, after World War II, decided, well, we need to figure this thing out, because while other countries lost a lot of people, the Russians lost a ton of people in World War I and World War II. So they had this little institute for surgical technology. And believe it or not, everything that we know about the right amount of compression to apply to tissue came from the 1940s and 50s. So, because we're always trying to strike a balance between hemostasis, no bleeding, and perfusion, healthy tissue. So we got to squeeze the tissue enough that it doesn't keep oozing after we've cut it. And then if we squeeze it too tight, what happens? If we squeeze the tissue too tight, what do we call that? What happens? What's a lack of blood flow? Ischemia? And then if we have ischemia for too long, what happens? Necrosis, tissue death, okay? And then it rots and smells terrible. So we always are trying to strike that perfect balance. Well, the Russians obsessively studied this, and they came up with the quantity of 8 grams per square millimeter. That is the right amount. If you apply 8 grams on a square millimeter of tissue, that is the force that closes that vessel, coaps that lumen. You don't get any more perfusion, but you also don't get any ischemia, okay? And we still use that as our benchmark for tissue, because tissue hasn't changed, right? Mm-hmm. So once we kind of figure that number out, we just build everything around that number. So in about 1953, a doctor named Mark Ravitch goes over to Russia and he gets a little tour. And he sees what the Russians are doing, and they've kind of created all these kind of cool reusable staplers and all this fun stuff. And he thinks, well, that would be awesome back in America. So he comes back, and then that kind of creates the origins of the original U.S. surgical medical company that started making staplers. Now, jump forward to the 1970s, and now all of a sudden we've got, technology has increased rapidly, but there's one big thing problem that we're always trying to solve in surgery. Can you think of what it is? Yes, we are trying to deal with infection. Reusable devices, no matter how well they are cleaned and designed and everything else, still get bugs in them. We still get bioburden. We still get debris and blood and all that stuff, right? So infection's a big deal. So now we start to see the genesis for disposable single-use instruments, because we got a lot of superbugs. Can you name any of them that we see in the OR? Pepsi.
HIV.
What's that?
HIV.
Yeah, that's another one that's not, that actually doesn't live outside the body terribly easily. That tends to die within hours. So Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA specifically. MRSA, my daughter got a MRSA infection in her calf and had to have an IND when she was 11, and she was in the hospital for 10 days and isolation and all kinds of fun stuff. A bunch of evil stuff out of the leg. So MRSA, terrible stuff. C. diff. You know what Creutzfeldt-Jakob is? What's that?
Say it again.
Creutzfeldt-Jakob. No, CJ. Yes. CJ is a prion transmitted neurological disease, mad cow. That's what a lot of people, that'd be the animal version of CJ. For a while there, in some hospitals, if you had CJ, after they did your surgery, they threw everything away. And when I say everything, I mean hemostats, I mean snaps, I mean everything went in the trash. Because prions are this weird little, not even a full protein, but they are really hard to kill. And so we have superbugs that we know about now, and they had them then, but it seems like they have more now because they're getting antibiotics and yada, 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 and they develop to resist the drugs that we have. So disposable single-use instruments come about. Now, up until the 1980s, you got, for the most part, you got a laparotomy. You know what a laparotomy is, right? Lapar, Latin for abdomen, otomy, big hole. So we got a laparotomy, and so they opened you sometimes from subxiphoid down to suprapubic, and you got opened up. They put a Bookwalter or an Omni or something in you, and then they just went in and did their work, right? I mean, I think about my mother's C-section scar versus, say, a woman now. It's crazy. You know, when I was born in 1969, she had this huge C-section scar, and now they get a little tiny, little transverse fan steel incision. Boop, baby comes out, nice round head, no cone heads. You know, it's great. So, up until the age you got a laparotomy. So, when was the first laparoscopic cholecystectomy done in the United States? What year?
93.
You're good. You're doing great. I'm going to buy a lottery. You're going to buy a lottery ticket for me. 88. 1988, Dr. Barry McKernan at the University of Georgia does the first laparoscopic cholecystectomy. And it's kind of a weird, funky, modified thing. They took scopes that they had an eye cup on it. So they had visualization through the scope, but the light source was coming in through another port. And then they had kind of modified instruments to do it. How long do you think a gallbladder typically takes on a relatively healthy person these days? 30? I mean, seriously, if a gallbladder took 45 minutes, it's probably because they futched around with a cholangiogram, you know, where there was a little scar tissue. I mean, I've seen them done in 20. I've seen them done in less. I mean, they're just a 4-port lap chole. It's almost a perfect surgery now. You almost can't make it any faster or better. Doctors who do robotic choles, how many eye rolls can I do? I mean, you know, so because it takes more time to dock the robot and undock it, and this costs $1,500 just for the drapes on the arms of the robot. But the docs like to do it to practice, right? So, anyway, it's not good tape broadcasting. But anyway, so yeah, 1988 to do the first lap chole, it takes like 10-ish hours. You know, because again, it's all new. It's like going to the moon. Never been done. It may have been done in Europe, but that was the first time it was done in America. So then, guess what? What they start to figure out is if we make little tiny holes, even if we make more than one little tiny hole, infection goes way down. Recovery, so much faster. Return to work, return to regular activity. They get up and they ambulate. They feel better. They say nice things about the doctor. You know, they say nice things about the surgery. They go to the beach and they're like, I can still wear my bikini. Right? So it's a fantastic thing. So the clinical benefits of minimally invasive surgery, which you'll hear us refer to as MIS, are incredible. So adoption. So now guess what we have to do? We have to put this on a stick, right? I got to get it down a trocar. In about 1988 or so, when we first came out with this, so this is an 18 millimeter trocar. We don't make this anymore. We discontinued this. I have a total of one now that I've kept. It looks cartoonish when you compare it to, say, a 5 millimeter trocar. And this looks like the kind of thing you would see on a display stand to be like a big version of what we really sell. You know what I mean? But no, this was the actual thing. But here's the thing. If you were going from here to here before, it's state of the art. Now you're just getting this hole that's about the size of a nickel maybe. It's tiny, right, compared to laparotomy. So this was state of the art, and we actually made a stapler that went down this. We discontinued that as of 2 years ago. And you had this thing, this little exchange rod, because what would happen is you would put a 12 in. You couldn't fit anything down the 12 except maybe some graspers, but you put the 12 in, you put this through the 12, and then you would slide, then you take the 12 off, and you would slide this down to upsize your hole. This would come out, and that would stay in the patient. So you would dilate that port. So I keep this around just to sort of help you have a sense of the history of where we went in terms of size. So then we want to put that on a stick, and this is not it, but this is the closest thing we have to it. Mine's very beat up. It's got little black skid marks all over it. So we still make this. And we made it the first time we made it, it was only a 35 millimeter stapler, and the jaws barely opened. It was this. Again, it was state of the art. It was incredible. You could get this down a 12 millimeter trocar. You could fire it 8 times, close it, fire it, open it. Got an articulation knob. The first ones were straight. You can bend it. You can rotate it. It's pretty snazzy, right? Wow. This stapler is 20 years old now. We've been making it for 20 freaking years. And US Surgical was making a version of this even before then. Okay, so you'll see this out in the ORs. And now what we've done is now we've come to the point where now we have lithium-ion battery that pops into the back. Single handle, because now what happens is we close it. We don't have a knob anymore for articulation now. The same knob that rotates it, we pull on it, push on the tissue, we articulate it, it stays, we pull it again, it straightens out. We can do everything one-handed. And instead of having to pump on the stapler, which causes this to bounce, now when we fire it, it's a really smooth Simple, we pull back the safety and we fire it. If you're on something like a renal artery or pulmonary artery or something like that, having the stapler stay perfectly still is a big deal. Some docs are like, I don't need that. I'm like, I know, you're a big, strong man. However, the pulmonary artery is still a very friable, very delicate thing that you don't want to tear. They don't bleed out in 3 minutes, right? So having this, and then here's what the staples look like. So they're now made out of a titanium alloy. How do we like titanium for implants?
Lightweight and strong.
Hang on a second, raise your hands, you're all talking. You already answered, you've already answered, give me somebody else.
I didn't answer.
You answered. It is hypoallergenic. We call it biostatic. Germs do not like to grow on titanium, and I've never heard of a titanium reaction in a patient. Why else do we like it? What were you saying?
It's light and strong.
It is very light and strong. Specifically, though, we don't use commercially pure titanium because it develops stress risers when we bend it. So unbending it tends to make it fail. So we combined this as Ti-6-4. So it's vanadium and aluminum. A little special sauce in there to make it sort of bendy and springy. So it's 90% titanium is the alloy that's in here. Why else do we like titanium? So germs don't like it. It's very easy to work with. It's very strong. It holds. It can store a lot of energy, so it's very strong and light. Why else?
Sounds cool.
It does. Unobtainium sounds better, but that's not a real thing.
Without it doesn't reject it, right?
No, that's kind of what you were just saying. That'd be going hand in hand with the whole allergic or the reaction. What do patients sometimes need after they've had an operation?
PET scans.
They need imaging. If they need an MRI, this is not a ferrous or an iron-based metal. If you ever, one of these days, you'll probably see an image of a patient who has a stainless or cobalt chromium implant in their body. And what happens is what we call artifact. It looks like a huge sunburst on the MRI, and it literally makes the image almost unusable. So then those patients have to get a CAT scan, which sometimes doesn't show the same thing as an MRI, blah, blah, blah. Titanium will simply show up like a little tiny black shadow. They've got a clip or a staple or anything else. Titanium will just be a little black shadow on the image. Okay? So those are some of the major reasons that we like it. Okie doke? So I do not bring every stapler that we make. I'm just going to review the most common ones, and then I'm going to have you get up here in a second, and then when we're done with stapling, I'm going to give you like 10 minutes to take a little bio break, check Instagram, and then, or see that your kids are like already at home and they're like, what are we going to eat? Whatever. So I'll let you do that, okay? So real quickly, let me cover one other thing. I just thought about this. Sorry about that. One of these, one of these, one of these, and one of these. So, and Sean, forgive me if this is tricky. I'm trying to speak clearly so you can at least follow along.
Okay.
We have white cartridges. We have blue. We have gold. We have green. And we have black. Now, I am only speaking for Ethicon. Medtronic, also known as Covidien, also known as Tyco, also known as AutoSuture, also known as US Surgical. They've changed their names a lot. Have the same colors basically in their standard staplers. They now have created some cartridges, and you'll see tan and purple. They got some weird colors because they mix in different staple heights. There's no clinical evidence that that works better, but hey, if you go to a hospital that buys Medtronic staplers, they load a little bit differently, but the idea is the same, okay? Let me go back real quick. There's one point I forgot to cover. Why do we staple instead of, say, just use a scalpel and suture? Because suture's really cheap. Scalpels are pretty durable and cheap also. Why don't we just cut the tissue and then just sew it? Time is one factor. Absolutely, time's a big factor. OR time can be kind of pricey. What's another reason why stapling might be preferred over, say, just cutting and sewing?
Accessibility.
Sometimes, yeah, accessibility. If we go very deep inside the pelvis, say for like a low anterior resection, a colorectal case where you have to get very deep.
Go ahead.
You angel of mercy. No, we'll just, no, we were just talking about taking a 2-minute break here after this section.
What about like tension?
What?
What about like tension?
Well, so what you're getting at, I think where you might be mentally, is suturing is a variable skill. How tight you tie it, how loose you tie it. Do you do interrupted? Do you do a continuous technique? What kind of material do you use? A resorbable suture or a permanent suture? And there's so many variables. Plus, it's a difficult skill. Suturing really takes a lot of time to master. And it won't be the same in two people's hands. And that's where we're really getting at, which is stapling is very reproducible. Back to that whole how many people died in war thing. What the Russians thought was, we can't make everybody an MD. There's just not enough time. There's not enough people. There's not enough schools. I mean, look how competitive tech programs and nursing programs and medical programs. Nursing schools are generally restricted because they want everyone to get the same quality or the best possible education. So at UNM, I think the PA program every year gets a few hundred applicants and they take 30. Nursing school gets a few hundred applicants and they take 60. I mean, they just can't pump everybody through. But here's the thing. If you can teach somebody in a surgical theater, in a forward position, in a battlefield, in an arena like that, if you can teach them how to use this, you have more people fixing more people faster and either sending them home or getting them better or whatever. So that's really where stapling came from. It's very reproducible. It's not like suturing, which can be wildly different. Well, any questions? Okay.
So the different colors.
Yes, thank you. Who asked that?
Is it a standard color code?
So here's the thing, yes. So whether it's my company or Brand X, those colors mean the same thing. Now, I will always quote the staple height, which is what the colors mean. White is 1 millimeter, blue is 1.5, gold is 1.8, green is 2.0, black is 2.2. You do not need to memorize this. You know why? We print it on the package on every single one, okay? And you won't need to know that. What you'll start to think of is white is a vascular load. White's what I'm going to use on a blood vessel. Blue I'll probably use on a small bowel or I'll use on an appendix. Gold is an in-between load that we developed mostly for bariatrics when we're doing a gastrojejunostomy. So we have thick gastric tissue with thinner small bowel tissue. So blue's not quite long enough. The legs on it aren't long enough. Green is a little too loose and it'll ooze too much after we staple and cut it. So gold was that nice in-between size that we came up with as we continued to do more and more procedures like that. Green typically was always sort of our colon load. It was kind of our thick tissue. But what we've noticed is that, especially with sleeve gastrectomies and other bariatric procedures and other colorectal procedures, is that doctors, these devices let them do more and more. And so we are putting more and more force through that reload every time we fire it now. And real distal gastric tissue can be very thick. And so now we have a black load which handles even thicker stuff than green used to. We've even had to reinforce the staplers as well so that they don't, because it literally reflects and bend the metal at the end of the stapler, which is kind of impressive because you consider it's machined out of a single piece of steel. That's how much force we're shoving through these stapler loads. So those always mean what I just said. Now, Brand X, the other company, Medtronic, they quote the staples in open. So they'll refer to this white instead of a 1.0, which is a closed height, they'll call it a 2.5 load. To me, that doesn't make as much sense because what you care about is how big is a staple when it's doing what we want it to do. Because if a staple is unformed like a set of goalposts, it's not doing anything, right? It's not holding anything together. But that's the way they do it. They quote 2.5 and whatever it is, 3.5 and the other sizes. I go 1, 1.5, 1.8, 2. And so staple comes out of the pocket, and in every stapler that's out there, staple comes out of the pocket, it hits the anvil, it turns around and forms into a little letter B. That's been going on for a century. So we're going to talk about how to load and unload them, and then I'm going to pass them around, and then we're going to get you to play with them and fire them, okay? I only have enough reloads for you to kind of use like the little motorized one. The other ones, I want you to practice loading and reloading. I'd like you to not fire them. If you do, that's okay. I have a little Scrub Tech doll at home. I'll step into it. You will hear this referred to, now we call it a TLC, which stands for transecting linear cutter. You will hear it referred to 99% of the time as a GIA, which stands for gastrointestinal anastomosis. That is because the other company came up with the name GIA, and they were around before we were, and so everybody calls it a GIA, the same reason a lot of people call all sodas Cokes and all tissues Kleenex. Okay, we just lost out. But as Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So I don't care what you call it as long as it says that's common. So, right? Here's how it loads. Okay, this stapler will come out of the box with a load in it. Okay, almost all of our staplers now come unloaded. That's a materials thing. That's a cost savings thing. That's how we've adapted to the market over the years. This one, though, has been around for a long time. We still sell a package with a reload, okay? So load looks like this. It'll have a cap on it. I like for you to leave the cap on until the stapler is loaded. Not because the staples fall off, they won't, but because there's a little fin that keeps the driver from being moved out of position. That cap actually fills that little slot. It keeps everything nice and tight until it's time to fire. This one loads from the front, sets down at the back. Now officially I'm supposed to tell you to pull on these little tabs at the sides because the blade is right here. So you're not supposed to mash your finger in there. You're not supposed to load it like this and cut your glove and your finger inside your glove, right? So you're not supposed to do that, but I'll be honest, I watch most of you, and you guys all do this, okay? So unload, reload. So here's the thing. Stapler's gonna come loaded. Most surgeons that want to use this will want you to hand these two halves to them separately. They will not want you to hand it to them together because they've got to put this around the tissue, colon, the bowel, the stomach, whatever. As you look, there's a little hook. When you close this handle, this hook closes around a pin, okay? And then they close it. Here's the little firing knob, and they go shunk, shunk, okay? It's like an old credit card machine. Bring it back. You as the tech, when you get this back, you need to either vigorously swish this in water, saline or water, in a basin deep enough to cover it, or I need you to take a pretty wet lap or Raytac or something like that, or chest tape, and clean it off. Because all these little tiny staples that I dumped out here, they stick to it. Rarely does every single staple make it into tissue. Sometimes what you're stapling is only this long. Why? You got to clean this off because then what happens on the next firing? You pop this out, you reload it, you go to fire it, there's still some staples on there, and now what happens to that knife blade when it travels down? It catches a staple, which is basically a piece of wire, and now instead of that blade traveling cleanly and neatly through the tissue, it's dragging a wire in front of it, so now you're lacerating tissue instead of cutting tissue. You're still getting rows of staples on either side of your cut line, but it's not as pretty and it's not as clean, and you're potentially affecting your outcome. So you, my scrub tech friends, have the ability to make this thing work as well as possible. That's a critical function that you perform, is the loading, the reloading, and then cleaning it off in between loads. Okay.
That's a disposable, one-time use.
You can fire this 8 times.
Oh, wow.
But once you've reloaded it, there's a load that comes in it, and if you end up loading it 7 more times, if I'm in the room, I'll say, attention, you fired that 8 times. The surgeon will generally know why I'm saying that. They'll say, oh, okay, nurse, give me another one. Some surgeons are like, I'm only going to use it 1 more time, Jules. I'm like, I understand, but after firing number 8, I have to say in a loud, clear voice, you know it's only indicated for 8 times. You know why it's only indicated to be fired 8 times?
It's damaging it.
Sometimes the blade can start to get dull. We're saying, according to the package insert, because we have a package insert just like drugs, we have labeling just like drugs. What we're saying is, we stand behind, under normal performance, you know, swishing and cleaning it in between fires, we say that we can pretty much guarantee that when you fire that thing 8 times, it's going to be a nice, sharp cut line. Stable uniform every time. But the blade is the thing that starts to dull. Okay? Some patients have a lot of calcified tissue. Sometimes You run into old suture and scar tissue. There's other stuff. This is a 400 series stainless blade, so it's the same grade as the scalpels, the 10s and 15s and 11s that you use on the field. But 8 times is what this is indicated for. So I'm going to pass this around. I'm going to have you, and you're going to practice unloading it, reloading it while I move on to the next stapler. Okay? Because we're gonna practice up here, and I'm gonna have a volunteer, and you're gonna make a functional end-to-end anastomosis, and I'll explain what all that is. This you will hear referred to as a TA. We call it a TX. Same reason, trademarks, names, all that fun stuff. This one does not cut. This one literally fires a 60 millimeter rows of staples. Okay, that's all it does. Because once we've made an anastomosis or once we transect the tissue, sometimes we just want to make some holes, and then we want to seal off those holes, and that's what this does. Okay, it's got a closing trigger and then a firing trigger. It's got a release button at the back. What you need to know, my friends, is that this comes with a load in it as well, and this one's super easy. Okay, pulls out, pops in. That's it. Also, I'd like you to clean off this anvil, this backside that receives those staples in between firing. I almost never see this fired more than once. Again, like a lot of things you'll hear me say, if you're firing this more than once in a case, you're in a hell of a case. Okay? So, but sometimes in trauma cases, you will fire this more than once. They've got a gunshot, they've got multiple penetrations, they've got multiple otomies, and you're going to be resecting a lot of valve, so you might be using this more. This is indicated to be fired, I think, also 8 times. There's no knife blade in it. It's just more about the reliability of the mechanism. Okay? So,
what did the TA stand for?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I have no idea. Sorry. It's been many years. I've been through it all. I've had a couple mortgages, an ex-wife, 3 kids. I don't remember what TA stands for, sorry. But if they say TA, this is what they're wanting. They're wanting a non-cutting stapler. Now, you as a scrub tech, here's a little thing I'll tell you that doesn't really apply to anybody else in the room. When they ask for this, you know what else is nice to have along with this? Some Alice's or some Babcocks. Because what will happen is they're generally going to want to pick up the edge of the tissue using something like an Alice or a Babcock. Those are the most common things I see. They'll pick it up, they'll slide this around the tissue, so you'll have 3 or 4 Alice's that the assistant will be using to hold up that edge of tissue. They'll slide this around it, close it. Once they've fired it, then they'll either take some Mets or some Mayos or a Sharp of some kind, and they'll come along and they'll trim, while it's still closed, they'll go, and they'll trim that tissue off, and then you'll get handed back the Alice's and the Babcocks with a little wad of tissue on it, okay? So when this comes out, be thinking, I could probably get some Alice's and some Babcocks in. Cool? All right, that's a little pro tip from Uncle Jules for you there. Next open stapler, this is called Contour. Contour does one thing, and it does one thing really well. And that is, it's curved on the end. Notice, my friends? Yeah, it's curved. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to pass this around so you can practice loading and reloading this too. That one's easy. See how it's curved on the end? This is specifically very, very important for very distal colorectal procedures. It goes very deep in the pelvis because of this curved end on this radius load. It's essentially a 40 millimeter staple line in a 30 millimeter radius, okay? Why is that a big deal? Who does this really benefit the most? Which type of patient benefits the most from this type of stapler?
Oh, pregnant.
Men. We don't have babies. We're not packing uterus. We only got 2 organs in our pelvis instead of 3. So our pelvises tend to be sometimes about the diameter of this water bottle. They generally are kind of conical, so they're kind of like a water cup. So the old staplers like that TA, TX that we make in even a 30 millimeter because it's square on the end. If I try to insert it, it'll stop about there. Okay? So let's say I've got a cancer. Let's say I've got a mass, a huge polyp, something the GI couldn't deal with. And it's really distal in the pelvis. in the old days, before this came out in about 2005, if I had a really distal mass, hey, if I was a super brave surgeon, because it can get really vascular down the right where the rectum transitions to the anus, there's a lot of real rich blood supply down there, and there's what's called lateral stalks, which are these big vessels that come in from the sides to feed the rectum. The problem is if that mass was really distal, and I really couldn't get it and seal it and do everything I wanted to, I might take as much as I possibly could with my very long, sharps handle and transect it out. But you didn't get an LAR, a low anterior resection. What did you get instead? You know what surgery you got? You got an APR, abdominal perineal resection, which means I went in, I took out the bad stuff, I sewed your anus up from the inside, and you got a colostomy forever and ever, amen. But with Contour, I can go really deep in the pelvis. I can get almost all the way down to what's called the anal verge. Not something that people love to talk about until they have colon cancer, and then that's all they want to talk about. But this thing goes very deep, and it goes very deep in narrow pelvises, and this has allowed many more patients to then have the cancer or the bad tissue removed and then return to normal function. Okay? I can make lots of jokes about, hey, it's more fun to read magazines and go to the bathroom and get away from the kids. But seriously, if you wake up and you still have normal bowel function, that is a very big deal. Okay? So, but here's the thing. This stapler really mucks with you scrub tech for some reason. Because it's not a square. It's not a straight line. This load curves. It's very simple. See the circle? See the reload? It just goes in there. See how it makes like a little half circle? Just follow the curve. Just follow the curve. Don't push. Just rotate. Real easy. This, I in-service more than any other stapler. Okay? So you need to practice with it. So you just slide it in. Now, I don't want somebody getting brilliant and popping this red thing out. You can put it back in, and it's not that hard. But for now, I just want you to practice loading and reloading. This can be fired 6 times. So sometimes what I'll recommend is instead of them opening up one of these, I'll say if you're already going to make your distal transection, just use this, and then use this for your proximal transection too. Some docs like this anyway, and so they open up more than one. But that's just, again, another little pro tip for you. Okay? So that's called Contour, and you'll generally only see it used in very specific circumstances. So, on to so this, as I said, is this on a stick. Okay? This on a stick turned into this. Same thing, we make a few different colors of reload. This is an older one, so we don't make as many reloads. But this one, instead of coming in from the front and setting down at the bottom, you slide it in the back, and you press down until it clicks. You'll notice there's a little blue square here on the side because there's a little notch in the jaw of the stapler. So that little blue box should go into that notch. Put the box in the box, okay? Now, sometimes it can take a fair bit of force to pop this out with your thumb, okay? I recommend that you put your hand around this articulation joint, this bendy part. As long as there's a towel on your mayo or your table, you just press down and it'll pop out. Okay? So after the surgeon has fired the stapler and handed it back to you, what do I want you to do with it? Or vigorously swish it. I've seen some of you kids out there, and you take a specimen cup and you put some saline water and you go dinky, 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 but the water doesn't get up into here where the bad stuff is. I need you to be able to vigorously swish that. So I either need you to get a basin, and if your circulator's like, just stay after them until they get you the water, the saline you need, because you don't want to irrigate with the thing you're washing off the staples, okay? Get yourself a kidney, get yourself a bigger bowl, so you can really get in there and make a mess, okay? And when you're done, push it in from the back, drops into the front. All you gotta do is push down on your table. You don't want to just push down with just a mayo cover, because you might buttonhole it, okay? Now the rest of these are exactly the same way. They're just bigger, fancier, bulkier versions of that. Same thing. Load pops in its back, sets down at the front, until it clicks. Push on your table, okay? You want to do it with your thumb? I don't mind. I'm just trying to give you options, okay? It's like when you go to the gym and they say, give me 20 push-ups, but if you want, you can do it when you need, okay? That's all I'm offering here. Now, this battery, here's another tip. This battery, when it comes in the package, you'll have the stapler lay in the package. It will come without a reload. It'll come empty, okay? This battery will be separate. Do you know why the battery is always separate from the stapler when it first comes out of the package? Second reason, because as soon as I connect this, it is energized and will start sucking power. And it's good for how long do you think? Lithium ion. 12 hours. Yes, it is good on your back table for 12 hours. Okay? It can be fired 12 times. It may feel slightly warm because it is drawing power, drawing current. Okay? It also comes separate for the main reason that the Department of Transportation says that if it cannot be energized and connected, it wouldn't be transported to the top. So that's a DOT thing, believe it or not. So, comes in, there's no up or down, you just look for the tabs, pop it in, you're good to go. It's important that you get the battery and that you keep an eye on your circulator, because I have been in cases where as soon as the tech reads for it, because this is kind of pressed into what we call a blister, a big clear package, it's pressed in there, so you pop it out and you're turning to put it on your back table and the circulator is, where are you going? Okay? We do not sell these separately. They come with the stapler. You need to get it out of the package. The worst one I saw was at Loveless a year or two ago. Battery's still in there. The tech has pulled out the stapler, has not had time to reach for the battery, and it's a small room, so the distance from the back table here to the wall is like right here. And so the circulator, as soon as the tech gets the stapler out, takes the tray and flips it up against your chest so she can walk away. And the battery is now right here against her very unsterile position. So make sure you get both pieces. Because if you don't get both pieces, you got to open up another one. And that's okay. Jules appreciates you opening up more than one stapler. But it's not really efficient or cost savings, right? So anyway, that's how that goes.
Disposable, the battery?
The whole damn thing. Now, this will decompose down to a lithium salt. What we're told to tell you. So most hospitals, meaning everyone that I have here in New Mexico, just leaves attached and that whole thing goes in your red bin. Okay? Now, I am going to talk about a sensitive political subject at this time, and that's called reprocessing. Okay? Nobody reprocesses staplers, but some hospitals, to make it easy, put everything in the teal-colored Stryker reprocessing bin. I don't care. You do whatever your hospital tells you to do. Okay? I'm not here to preach for or against it. That's where I'm going to let that statement lie. Okay? I'll just say that Stryker would not have any product if we didn't make it first. So, it goes in the bin. Okay? The whole darn thing is disposable. Some states, whatever reason, have been worried because of the whole laptop battery thing. It's the same idea. And the techs will disconnect it before they throw it away. Doesn't matter. You do it again. You do what your hospital wants. Jayco has been on a real world tour this year, and now I got to wear beard covers everywhere. So Jayco picks a thing every year, and that's their thing. You know, it's like a Chinese calendar. This is the year of the beard covers. All right. So I'm going to pass this. Tell you what. At this point, since this one loads and reloads kind of the same, I'm going to pass it around most of these so you can check out the battery. But at this point, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you come up here, okay? Because we're going to play with the staplers. It powers the stapler. Yeah, come here. You'll see how it works. Now, the first thing I'm going to have you do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have somebody load it and connect the battery. Who's move all in here? You. Okay. So here's your stapler. Here's your battery. Put the battery in. There you go. Everybody kind of likes to pop it in. It's like a magazine. And then put that in.
Is there a safety?
There is a safety.
Is there any way you're going to get pinched while you're putting it? Batteries in it?
Nope. She was paying meticulous attention. Show you a little tip. Normally, you have a back table, and this thing, you stand it up. Like that. You can hold on to it too, but if you hold back here, I mean, I do it all the time. This is the cartridge half, this is the anvil half. So you can either get up here where you can control the end of that jaw a little better, or once you get comfortable with it, you can definitely do it like that. But let me do that again. Okay. In? Sure, let's say that's, yeah, then there you go, look at that. So here's the other reason why I want you to be careful loading this. Actually, it wasn't. No. So see this little yellow guy at the very back of the reload? That little yellow tab right there?
Maxine,
Yeah.
Okay.
can't see.
Right here.
There's a little yellow tab in the back of that cartridge.
Okay.
Cool. That little thing is called a sled. So this is a 60 millimeter. We make this powered stapler in a 35, which I'll show you in a second, a 45, and a 60. Okay. Competitors do it a little bit differently, but that's the basic idea. Different needs mean we need different sizes. Okay. So like a thoracic surgeon working up here on a lung doesn't like a 60 because you can't insufflate, you can't blow up the chest. The ribs keep everything very rigid. So they prefer a 45 because they have to turn tight little corners, right? 60 is sometimes this big boom we're swinging around in there, especially when you see it under a scope. Okay? But here's the thing. This little tiny cartridge is holding about 88 staples, which means underneath every staple is a little plastic driver that pushes it out of the pocket. And as the sled travels down the cartridge, it hits that driver, pushes it up, which pushes the staple, which then hits the anvil. So that means there's about 190 parts, 180 to 190 parts in this one little cartridge, okay? So we are so accustomed to things. I mean, it's like carrying around iPhones. But you don't remember life without an iPhone, right? Did you ever play albums like records? So you know what they are. Did you ever have an 8-track? Yeah, nobody here's ever seen an 8-track, right? God forbid be in a car with an 8-track, right? Yeah, it was one of the first cars I drove. So we're just used to this. We're so accustomed to this, we forget that this thing really needs to be handled carefully. You in a laparoscopic, in a dark room, where you're just talking about the Raiders game or whatever. When you're bumping this on, you can bump that sled out of position while you're kind of like, I'm just trying to get it in there. Okay, you're trying to move quick. And if this thing is out of place by even 2 or 3 millimeters, this stapler will lock up. Okay? It's designed to do that so that it does not accidentally cut without stapling. Okay? So I want you to be careful when you're putting it in and kind of pay attention to when you're guiding it in that you don't bang it on the end while you're kind of jabbing around looking to load it. Okay? That's the other reason I also ask you to leave this cap on. See how there's a little fin on it? There's a little red fin that fills up that middle channel and helps keep that sled in place. It's not perfect, trust me. There you go, boom. So let's pretend we're doing a little wedge resection on a lung, okay? So who wants to fire it? There you go. So there's the stapler. So here's the way we're gonna fire it. There's the closing trigger. So there's the jaws. You're gonna place this on the lung tissue. Let's do it up here at the end so that people have a chance.
Excuse me. Thank you.
So you're going to close the stapler with that trigger right there.
Was it?
Yep. Now, pay attention to what happened. When you closed it, I want you to open it, press by squeezing the handle and pressing forward on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Open it. Where'd the safety go?
Yeah.
It disappeared. Yeah, it's sucked up inside the body stapler. So close it again. There's the safety. Okay. So yes, there is a safety. So you flip back that little red trigger. Now, once a surgeon closes a stapler, I will ask him to wait 15 seconds. Why do I ask him to wait 15 seconds? No, that is wrong. What did you say?
So the stapler can.
Well, that hasn't happened yet.
Ensure
Why
that
do I?
engages.
These are all wonderful, but totally incorrect answers. I want to exudate fluid out of the tissue. One of the things we know about tissue is that it has solid properties and it has liquid properties. Okay? So now, not all tissue is the same. Gastric tissue is different than fat, which is different than lung, which is blah, blah, blah. Okay? But what we know is if we take tissue and we close it, and we apply that force down here at the end, we will gain about an extra 0.5 millimeter of tissue thickness. Okay? Now remember, I showed you 5 colors of reloads and they went from 1 to 2.2. So 5 loads only covers 1.2 millimeters of thickness. If I can gain an extra 0.5 millimeter of compression, that's huge. That's the difference between me going from a green to a blue load, from a blue to a white load. There is a company called Gore that makes a buttressing material. It's like a little sock that we put on the stapler, and it reinforces or buttresses the staple line. And because of that, because we use it in lung tissue, or we use it on a vessel, or we use it in bariatric surgery to reinforce the staple line, gain that extra. But see, the Gore stuff adds a 0.5 millimeter. Now I can get that 0.5 millimeter back by squeezing the tissue for 15 seconds. What happens if I wait more than 15 seconds? Nothing. It is diminishing returns. We tend to get that 0.5 millimeter within 15 seconds, and after 15 seconds, out to infinity, to nothing. If you see it as a curve, that curve just flattens off. Okay? So, do I have doctors that want to wait more than 15? Why, yes, I do. I have a surgeon I work with on most Mondays, and he insists on waiting 30 seconds. You know why he likes to wait 30 seconds? Although I am a person when you can find my buttons, it is entertaining. But why do you think he likes to wait 30 seconds?
Just ensure. Why not?
Same reason some pitchers wear lucky socks during the playoffs. Because somebody told them that that's better. You know, 15's good, 30's better, right? Chocolate cake is good, chocolate cake with ice cream must be amazing, right? So, anyway, so you flip back to safety. Are you ready to fire?
Yeah.
Fire away. Fire when ready. Oh, you took your finger off the button.
Okay. I do keep going?
Yeah.
I do.
Now release. Now I want you to open it. There you go, and there you go.
Oh, what? Awesome.
There you go.
Oh, nice.
Now, the top, where we just see the straight line, that is called the crown of the staple. That's the top of the staple, okay? Bottom part of the legs, and that's what we really care about. We care that the legs went all the way through and it captured both layers of tissue and wrapped around, okay? The crowns always look good. It's the legs we care about, okay? And there's that nice little cut line, and there's 3 rows of staples all crammed into that little tiny area. Now, you did something inadvertently, but it was wonderful, and thank you for doing that, which is she pulsed it. She fired it. So as long as the blade and the drivers are traveling that way and we're making our staple line and our cut line, as long as it's going that way, it only does it as long as she holds her finger on the trigger. As soon as she takes her finger off, it stops. Some surgeons like to pulse it. They like to advance it. Maybe the tissue is very thick.
Can I see that up?
They've learned the technique or whatever, and they'd like to pulse it. But as long as your finger holds it in, now once the blade reaches all the way to the end and you take your finger off, it'll retract on its own. Okay? Now.
So those leftovers, could have been from the stopping?
No, that's because there was no tissue here.
Oh.
Remember I said sometimes the tissue you're taking is only this big? Yeah. So she didn't have it back here, and she didn't have it back here, and so you have staples left over. Now, here's what I want you to do. What you've got in your hands. I want you to close it. Okay. I want you to flip back to safety. I want you to fire. Oh dear. It stopped, didn't it? Because this load has already been fired. This is an example of, we got busy talking about whatever in the room and we didn't reload it. or that sled got bumped out of position, or potentially there's a defect in our cartridge. Oh my goodness, she can't open the stapler. Because you cannot open that stapler because that blade is at the end of a shaft. And there's a series of gears and there's a rail way back on the handle there that drives that blade forward. And we, for safety reasons, make it so that you can't open that stapler until that blade is safely pulled back inside the body of that stapler. Oh dear, what do we do?
Reverse.
You have seen the reverse button that is on the left side of the stapler. I want you to push it. Now, note that it is not a light touch. You kind of have to dig your finger in there. That's the hardest thing for me to teach surgeons, is that they have to mash on that button a little harder than they think they do. The reason I'm dwelling on this stapler so long is you will see this at San Juan. You will see the stapler in Cortez. You will see the stapler at Mercy and Durango. You will see the stapler at every hospital in Albuquerque. And in fact, there is only one competitive stapling surgeon in the entire city of Albuquerque that uses Brand X, because we are good at what we do. You will see this in Las Cruces. You will see this in El Gordo. You will see this in Artesia. You will see this stapler everywhere. Okay? It's a really slick little tool, and it works for everything, and they use it in lots of general surgery and thoracic surgeons you go in. Now, here's the thing. Right, so do you remember how to articulate it? How to pull back on that knob and bend it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that knob that you're rotating, all you gotta do is, see how it's on a spring?
Mm-hmm.
All you gotta do is push against my hand, pull it back, and then push against my hand.
Oh yeah.
See, it only bends in that one plane.
It locks when you let go.
Yes, now, I want you to pull back and straighten it out. Now I want you to close the stapler. Now I want you to try to articulate. No, it will not articulate when it's closed. It will only articulate when it's open. I'm telling you all this stuff because remember, this whole day is about what's useful to you on the field, how you can get into trouble, how you can get out of trouble, how you can help your doctors get in and out of trouble.
Dale, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you have the staple, when the surgeon has the staple inside, staple in the tissue.
Yes.
When they fire the trigger, does it automatically staples the tissue itself one at a time, or does several staples come out into a perfect line? I was kind of looking at that there.
It's all one sequence. So what's happening is as the sled travels down, the staples are being pushed out of their pockets, and they're all forming in one long row. So as that sled travels down, the staples are pushed out, and they're kind of done like, think of a zipper.
Show her what it did.
Got you. Okay.
Oh, but here's the thing. There's a good time to mention that the staples are always 3 millimeters past the edge of the knife blade. So when you were pulsing the stapler, when you were firing it in chunks,
yes.
any time that the surgeon, let's say they, for whatever reason, halfway down, all of a sudden they notice some peritoneum, or they notice somehow something had gotten closed in the jaw of the stapler that they didn't notice, and they go, oh, I want to back out. If they back out of that staple firing, if they take their finger off and they hit that reverse button and they back up, you will see that there will be staples 3 millimeters distal to the cut line. So no matter where you jump out of that sequence, whether it completes a sequence or you abort that sequence, you will always have staples 3 millimeters past the cut line, so that when they open it, they're not going to get a transection without ligation. Make sense?
Yes.
Can you take this out again? Just pop it out?
You can pop it out with your thumb. There you go. I know it bites you.
And I'm all freaked out just because I feel like the staples are gonna poke me in the so.
No. Did you see the little technique on the table?
Kind of.
Pop it until it clicks. Now, wrap your hand around that articulation joint. Remember what I showed?
Right there at the bend where it can move.
Right here? Right here?
Okay, yeah.
What we're showing Sean. We take it here on the table, and we go.
Like that, okay.
There you go.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if I'd break it or, okay.
No. This anvil and this cartridge shaft, these two pieces are machined out of a matched 2 pieces of steel. This is solid. We don't stamp it. We actually use a machine to go in and grind out every one of those pockets. I mean, it's kind of incredible when we throw into this thing and we then pitch after
And then
one
throw it
piece.
away.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's cool though.
Yeah, it's wicked cool. Anyway,
I did not expect that to do that with tissue. I just.
so I need one volunteer to help me make an anastomosis. Anastomosis.
I'm like, what is that?
Do you know what an anastomosis is? That is a reconnecting of two limbs of a bowel. So you take two lumens and you rejoin them. You anastomose them. So like if we do a cardiac bypass, we anastomose the vessel to the other vessel, the one we are bypassing. If I take small bowel, if I do, let's say I make a gastric pouch for a gastric bypass, and I make a pouch and I bring a limb of bowel up to it, I make a gastrojejunectomy, I have anastomosed the bowel to the stomach. When I do a low anterior resection and I've taken out a chunk of colon, I re-anastomose the proximal limb of the colon to the rectal stomach. So anastomose, a surgical rejoining.
In dialysis, they anastomose the artery to the vein to enlarge for an access.
Yes.
So we have easy access.
Yes, you arterialize the vein so that you essentially blow it up. You pressurize the veins for people who get regular dialysis. They usually do it here in the antecubital. So, yeah. Okay, let me see. Where's, grab me that one over there. No? Yep. Who was my volunteer? Sure. So here's what we're going to do. We'll try to make it so that Sean can see what we're doing here. Okay? We're going to pretend that these are two sections of bowel. Okay? And once upon a time, they were joined, and then there was some cancer, and so we divided them. And so now we've got a proximal and a distal limb. Okay? Now, joining something end to end is very tricky intracorporeally inside the body. Okay? It can be done. Really skilled surgeons do it all the time. But it's way easier with a stapler, and it works just as well. It's called instead of calling it a true end-to-end, it's called a functional end-to-end, meaning that it functions as an end-to-end anastomosis. So here's what we're going to do, okay? Grab any reload out of that bag that says Echelon 16. There we go. Load it up. Okay. I'm going to be your faithful assistant. I'm going to be over here with my Babcocks and everything. We're going to hold these two sections of bowel together. Okay. First of all, this is a 45 millimeter stapler, so we want to put it down. That's my dad. Where's the 60? Oh, where's the other one? Where's the other one?
Yeah.
Let me have that one. I'm sorry, I was giving you the you can blame me. By the way, this is a great time to mention that a 45 millimeter Echelon reload, Echelon is this line of staplers, a 45 millimeter reload will fit in a 60. Okay, I'll show you.
How are we gonna know?
Because your awesome circulator is going to hand it to you. But it's written on the package. It's also written on. I mean, we put it everywhere. We put it on the box. We put it on the package inside the box. We put it on the staple cap. And we write it on the side of the stapler.
That's referring to the length.
That is referring to the length. Now, technically, on a 45 millimeter reload, you're getting about a 47 millimeter staple line and about a 43 millimeter cut line, give or take, okay? So that you've got that 3 millimeter gap I was talking about, right? Cool. We write it everywhere. But here's the thing. This is a 60 millimeter. See, it says Echelon Flex 60 on the side.
Yes.
And you can get a 45 millimeter reload to fit in because it'll still fit in that little box and you'll still get that fun little click. The problem is now you got about a 15 millimeter gap back here in the back of the stapler. And so that blade, it's going to come out and it's not going to meet up with the back of that reload like a couple little train cars hooking up. And it's going to go like you did. It's going to lock up. Good times, right? And then the doc's like, it's locked on the vessel. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Now, there's the reverse button that I showed you. That is a powered reverse. If you should get a power failure, if this battery dies, see this little hatch on the top that says manual override? Mm-hmm. You can pop that open and a little black lever will go bring, and it'll spring up. And it works like a winch or a come-along. You know what a come-along is? Okay? Ever pull a calf out of a pressure pile? Anyway, so you pull that up and it directly engages in the gears inside of this, and you pull up so hard you think you're going to break it. That's how hard you have to pull up. But you pull up and it'll rotate that little gear and it'll pull that thing back in those 3 millimeters, and you can open it and start over. Now, some surgeons will be super superstitious if you use the powered reverse, and they'll be like, give me a whole new stapler. Tell Jules I hate him. So, but if they use the manual override, that stapler's toast. It cannot be reloaded and reused, okay? Because there's a little thing, there's a circuit board inside here that controls that speed of the motor and everything. Once that manual override pops, that stapler is junk. Okie doke, so just be aware. But you can get a 45 to go in a 60. Because even though we write the numbers on everything, like for a white load, the writing on the package is in red, and it's in red on the 45, it's in red on the 60. We print it everywhere that we can think of to tell you, okay? But sometimes it makes it through the circulator and the tech and the doctor, and it goes in, you fire and it doesn't work. Just be aware that is a thing that can happen, okay? It can't happen the opposite way, obviously, because 60 is too long, as we just saw, okay? So, I'll pop that out. You're gonna load the correct reload into that stapler, okay? I'll wait patiently while you do that.
Tapping your foot.
Charge me at my kids' preschool for every hour. So this is upright. I want you to take that staple cap off. Okay, take that off. You'll probably have like a little baggie hanging off your mail or something where you put trash. That's usually where you go. Now, you doctor, what you're going to do is you're going to insert one half of the stapler in each side of that valve. Okay? You close it. And normally, what do I ask the surgeons to do at this point?
Wait 15 seconds.
Wait 15 seconds. Yes. Anyway, flip back to safety. Technically, this would be a one-handed operation. That's your first time. So then you're going to fire the stapler. It's so smooth and stable, you never know anything's happening. Now I want you to open it. So you're going to squeeze while you reach up with your thumb and press this thumb, and you're going to squeeze it. Oh, yes.
Wow.
Dawn, we've created a stoma in there.
Nice.
So we are creating a common channel. So now here's the thing. See that little wall that we've joined these two pieces, and yet we've cut in between. So what we want to do is we want to create a hole so that material can keep going through the valve from one side to the other. So instead of joining it end to end, we've kind of joined it end to end, but this is so much easier. So we don't have to sew all the way around, okay? But now here's the thing. Oh my God, there's poop still spilling out of this part, right? Right? So now we got to top it off. We got to close it, right? Now we need another volunteer to fire a different stapler. Now, where's my TX? One that looks like this, little hook. Nope, not contour. The one with the blue load in it. I have a reload out for there. It is right there. Okay. Now this one, I want you to pull that one out. There you go. Give me that. Now this load, we have to take the cap off before we put it in. We'll cover. Slide that bad boy in there. Now, this will not quite reach all the way across. I'm just going to spoil it for you now, okay? But you're going to put that all the way across the tissue. We try to use as little as possible, okay? You're going to close that till it clicks with the first light gray trigger. Okay? Now, when you're ready, I want you to fire plastic to plastic and hold it. With the dark gray trigger, yeah. Now, some doctors like to hold this a little bit longer at the end with these as a tamponade. You know what a tamponade is, right?
No.
Tamponade is I hold pressure on a wound to stop the bleeding. Okay? Use your imagination. There's a certain word that about stopping bleeding that sounds like tamponade, but it's different, okay? So, now, there's a trigger here at the back. You press that, open the stapler. Okay, open, open, open. You sometimes have to help it out a little bit. Because this is old. I've used this demo for like 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Now, Now there's a staple line across the top here. It did not cut, it simply stapled. Pretend that it went all the way across, just to humor me, okay? So it went all the way across, but guess what? That hole is still in there. Kind of like a little pair of pants, okay? We made the crotch of the pants, and now we made a little waistband, okay? So we closed the waistband, basically, okay? But now material can still travel through our anastomosis, okay? And while that was closed, that's where I said the surgeon would take some scissors or a sharp and they would cut that off, okay? Yay? There you go. But that's how you can use those devices in surgery, and that's where you guys will be handing stuff back and forth, and you'll take that out and you'll clean that off, and blah, blah, blah. Any questions about stapling?
Can we do this one? Because I may have already like started it.
Then it will not fire.
Oh, it won't?
No, if you started it, it will not keep firing. All of these staplers, once you start them, they generally will probably, like, do you have, yeah, you fired all the staples.
Yeah,
so that's okay. I've got kids, I know what it's like. But you'll notice that I can't even close it now. I'll send you a bill. Okay, so at this point, but this is a good time to mention that when these have been fired, so these staplers like this TX and this contour, see how this little pin that comes out? Yes. That's a pin that the surgeon can advance manually if they want to trap the tissue in this little window. See how this pin's actually built into the load? This pin's built into the stapler. That's a little tissue retaining pin. And it allows them that they can kind of put it around the tissue, and then if they want, they can telescope or slide up and down the tissue, okay? And then, but at the end, sometimes this stays deployed. So you have to pull it back or it won't come out. You can't get the reload out while the pin's out. Yes?
On this one, when you pulled the light gray clamp, how much force did it clamp with? Are you gonna slip?
I don't know. So probably a few pounds.
So it probably won't slip.
Probably won't. You probably shouldn't like hang on to the stapler as you fall backwards. But yeah, but I don't know how many pounds of force it is. It's enough that, we're trying to, again, coapt and seal, to squeeze, to compress it. Here's the thing. If you cannot easily close that stapler, like if you have to close it so hard that like your hand is shaking, the tissue's too thick. Or there's an OG tube trapped in there or something, but you need to get that out. Cool? So at this point, because we spent a bunch of time on stapling. So take a quick little bio break, do whatever, and then
eat a donut.
Yeah, get a donut, and then let's say, how much time do I really have, Maxine?
We're done at 3:30. So
that's a long time.
Yeah,
okay.
we still got
time. Because stapling and energy chew up 80% of the time, and then we go, oh, there's choke bars and clips, and then I'm done. Okay, so all right, go, run away, and I'll get organized for the next set.
Sean, do you want a virtual donut?
Oh, sure, thanks.
That's not what I thought. Like, I thought it had individual staples.
I think it's cool you want a beard. I've always wanted a mustache.
So Sean, I'm working on getting a camera that follows the person who's speaking.
Yeah.
Okay? So hopefully here pretty soon we'll get that in the classroom, so that way when somebody's speaking, you'll be able to see them. You don't follow them.
Okay.
I like to have big mustaches.
Okie doke. So any questions before I keep charging on? Okay, there's one stapler I forgot to tell you about. This is our circular stapler. He fires 2 rings, concentric rings of staples. And interesting with the mineral. And then there's a circular blade that comes out as well. This is a single fire device. It cannot be reloaded. It is for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is an end-to-end anastomosis. This stapler is passed transanally. Okay. So what happens is you as a tech, the reason I like to tell you about this is you're going to prepare the stapler, you'll have almost nothing else to do with it otherwise, okay? This typically, if you're doing an LAR, you will have a separate Mayo. It will be a dirty Mayo stand, okay? And on that Mayo stand, you will have this, bless you, I don't know a single guy who can. I sneeze. Seriously, I sneeze, and I have to hazmat has to come in and clean the room. My head goes back. It's just crazy. It's like a gunshot. I don't know how. Seriously.
I feel like I need earplugs.
Yeah, it's like in fourth or fifth grade. They all go, "Come with us, guys. You stay here." And we're in the other room, and they're like, "Okay, practice. We're gonna do noiseless sneezing." It's like ninja training. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you out here. Well, since you did the foot thing, I figured you were just hoping for anything. Okay. So real quickly, quick review for my Y chromosome brethren who came in a little bit late there. This is a circular stapler. You as a tech will typically have a dirty Mayo that this goes on. You'll also usually have a proctoscope, at least one type of pickup or something small like a mosquito or a snap. Even a Kelly's probably too big, and I'll tell you what that's for in a minute. But you'll have some sort of little grasper, some sort of forceps or pickups, and then you'll have some KY, you'll have some kind of lubricant or something on that. That'll just be there sitting on a Raytech, okay? So that's off to the side, and you can get that ready. The circulator can get that ready, frankly. The reason that's all dirty is because this is going to go down transanally, and everything from your mouth to your anus is non-sterile. That entire alimentary canal is non-sterile, okay? So we don't worry too much about it, but this is package sterile. This is the anvil, this little mushroom cap. This is the anvil, and this is where the staples are going to come out and hit and make those rings of staples. So what will happen is then when the surgeon's ready for it, they'll go, while it's still sterile, they'll take this apart, and this will stay up top. This will go in the proximal limb of the bowel, okay? And so what will happen is they'll put this, remember we took out a chunk of diseased colon or whatever? And we are going to make a true indent. We're not going to do our little pants legs like we did before. So this will go in the proximal limb. They'll tie a purse string suture, they'll do a purse string suture in the bowel, and they'll cinch it down, and so this will be sticking out of the bowel, okay? They'll go down below, then they'll pull that pointy part, that trocar, back into the housing of the stapler, okay? They'll go down, this will pass, you know why this is curved, by the way?
Rectum.
But the rectum is kind of floppy and flexible. What is curved that they have to navigate around?
The vagina, I guess.
The sacrum. Sacrum is this nice shovel-shaped piece of bone right back here, and your rectum follows that. So as they pass this, they have to follow that scoop of the sacrum. Okay, that's what they have to follow. This is up top, it's sterile. This is non-sterile. They'll put a little bit of lube on the end of this. They'll pass that up. They will size ahead of time. We've got these lollipop, looks like an egg on the end of a stick, and we have different sizes because we make this in 4 different sizes, 4 different diameters. They'll size the bowel first, then they'll go up, they'll pass that after they've chosen it. And then because you've used that contour, that curved stapler, or because you've done something, you've got a rectal stump down there with a staple line across it, okay? Now you'll start to open this counterclockwise. This is what the assistant is doing down below. If you're at the university, it's some poor resident who's having to do this while the attending stays up there nice and clean. They'll open this until this trocar starts to project out of the end, and they'll apply attention, and the person who's upstairs will be manipulating that rectal stump because you want this to just come out on one side or the other of that staple line. And it'll go pop. It'll pop through that staple line until that little orange area is exposed on the stapler. And then they'll take this that's tied into that bowel and they'll bring this together until it clicks. Then they'll slowly start to bring those together. You don't want any mesentery in the way. Why don't you want any mesentery in the way when you when you join the bowel? Because mesentery will impede healing. You need bowel touching bowel, okay? So they'll line up what we call the anti-mesenteric borders. They'll bring this together. On the face of the stapler is a little green gauge here. There's some lines on there. Now this stapler is interesting. All the other ones have these colored cartridges, right? And the colors mean something. Even if it's an open stapler like that TX or a contour, blue means 1.5 millimeters, green means 2 millimeters, okay? So the colors mean something. They'll break, but this one has very long legs on it, so we can tighten this down until it feels about as tight as they want it. As long as this little line is somewhere in this firing range, they can then flip this safety back, fire this. Now, when the blade comes out, it's a circular blade, okay, so it's a hollow cylinder tube. That blade hits a plastic washer in the back of this anvil, so that blade has to cut through a plastic washer, which they can feel. They'll feel the crunch, and they'll hear it. They'll literally hear a pop. And that tells them that it's been complete. That blade made it all the way to the back of the anvil. Then they'll open it. They'll do 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. They'll re-engage that safety. They'll rotate the stapler out this way, not this way. They'll rotate this so that this anastomosis, we don't jangle it all around. They'll bring this out. They will then open it, okay? They'll pop that anvil off again, and now you should have a ring of tissue in here. We call it the donut. We'll have a donut here. Remember I said you'll have something on your mail like a snap, some kind of little forceps, because then you want to go in there and you want to pluck that little donut out, and we want 2 complete donuts. We don't want letter C's, we don't want crescent moons, we want 2 complete donuts. Because that means we cut out that ring of tissue, and we joined it with, there's an anastomotic lip where we put those 2 pieces of bowel together, okay? Make sense? Mm-hmm. This was actually really hard for me to picture when I was learning this as a rep. Until I did it, and I was like, oh, I get it. But this is a single fire thing, so I can't show you how it does because this is an old fire room. But that's it. So you as the tech, your job is to make sure your mayo's good with the proctoscope and pickups and some gel and all this stuff. You may be helping up top, hold a retractor or something because someone's had to go down below to fire this. That make sense? Everybody good? Put this back together. That's it. Sorry, I had skipped this one before I sent you off. We started having donuts. So that is that. Now, Sean, I'm going to warn you right now, this next part's going to be hard to follow because I'm using the generator that's over on this end of the table, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
So, let's talk about surgical energy real quick. We make, Ethicon now owns all kinds of different energy products for use in the OR, but we've already talked about some energy, haven't we? We talked about stapling. It is mechanical energy. When I cut that tissue and I put a staple in it, and that staple forms a little letter B, and it's squeezing and holding that tissue, there's energy stored in that staple. That staple is what's keeping that tissue from flying apart. So we are storing energy in there mechanically. When I tie suture around something, there is energy stored in that suture, holding that tissue together while it heals, okay? So that is one version of mechanical energy, okay? What are some other types of energy that we use in the OR? Yes?
Vacuum.
Yes, so I just talked about mechanical energy. I guess that would, yeah, that would count, like a wound vac or something like that, or suction. I'm looking more for something like a monopolar, like a Bovie. What a Bovie is?
Yeah.
By the way, do you know why we call it a Bovie?
Because of that.
Yes, Dr. William Bovie. Have you seen one?
Yes.
And you see that the buttons on it are blue and yellow
Yes.
on the little pin. Do you know why the buttons on a Bovie are blue and yellow? Well, that's what the modes stand for, but why didn't we make them red and green or black and white? Why are they blue and yellow?
The glasses,
Because what?
like.
No, it's not like a red-green blindness thing. It's Dr. William Bovie attended the University of Michigan. Their colors are blue. Yellow. I'm not making this up.
Wow.
And here's the thing: if you invent something and that's your alma mater, and you can be like, "I'm making it blue and yellow," and you're like, "But Bovie," and you're like, "Hey, I invented it." Okay, great. You get elected to president, and you like having an orange comb over that looks like cotton candy. You can do whatever you want. That's it. So, anyway, Bovie, it's monopolar. Now, do you know what monopolar means? What does mono mean? One, single. It is a single pole. It's a single electrode. Electricity travels from the tip of that pin through the patient, through the grounding pad. It's technically a return electrode. We'll talk about that in a second. Through the return electrode to the generator, okay? Now, in the good old days, that was DC. It was direct current. Current came out, it went around, and all the way back to the generator. Those are true ground reference generator, meaning the generator sat at the side of the room and it was bolted to the ground, and there was a piece of metal that went into the ground. Somewhere in the home you live in, if it is a home on a foundation, there is a piece of rebar that goes down to the foundation into the ground, and the electrical supply to your house is grounded to the earth. Okay, that is what grounding means. Okay, we use an alternating current though, and that means that the current goes around and back and around and back and up, and it does it 60 times a second because household current or commercial current operates at 60 hertz. Okay, 120 volts at 60 hertz. That's the frequency of it. Now, monopolar does that. Now, here's the interesting thing. Why don't patients get electrocuted when we zap them with a Bovie? When we use that to seal and coagulate tissue. Are they? I just said there's not a ground reference generator in the OR anymore.
Have that electrode?
They do have the return electrode. But here's what's interesting. If I were to go stick a fork into the wall, you get electrocuted, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the same current flowing through this pin, so how come when I touch it to the patient, they don't convulse wildly and jump off the table? Because the Bovie converts the frequency. So the Bovie is operating somewhere around 22,000 hertz. The current coming out of the wall is about 60 hertz. And at 60 hertz, up to I forget where the threshold is. I think it's like 10,000. I can't remember my little slides. You will stimulate, muscle stimulation will occur at those lower frequencies. At higher frequencies, the current does not create any muscle stimulation. That's why they don't that's why they don't convulse, that's why they don't contract. And you will see, I'm not saying you won't see some muscle stimulation if you get near a nerve. You'll see it contract. There's a little facial nerve thing that the anesthesia guys use. You'll see that. But that's why. But now here's the other thing. How come the same amount of current is going through here, and we'll always refer to here because we always put it on a big meaty part of the patient. How come if the same amount of current is going through here and the pin, I get a tissue effect here, but I don't get a tissue effect here? How come I don't get a pad burn, but this works?
Because it might be metal and it's more concentrated with the energy.
They're both conducting, but electricity is going through both this and this. It's traveling, right? It's completing a circuit with the generator, right? So how come this creates a tissue effect, this pin, and this doesn't?
Does the pad have some sort of protection?
No.
I say like the point of contact versus the patch, the wider surface area.
It's like you're cheating back there. So she's exactly right. It's current concentration. You ever taken a magnifying glass and burned ants?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of course you did. Yeah. Or burn a hole in a leaf or something like that. You take all that sunshine that just feels lovely and warm and 72 degrees, and all of a sudden you focus it down and you concentrate that energy into a point, and now you can start a fire. Return electrode's this big. Bovie tip is 3 millimeters wide. Okay? Current concentration is why this has a tissue effect and this does not. Okay? So I just want you to be thinking about that. Now, here's the other thing. You haven't been at the OR yet, most of you, but if you go in there and you'll hear the nurse say to the surgeon, what do you want the Bovie set? And they'll say 30-30. Why? 30 what? What's 30? Watts actually. But here's what's interesting. 30-30 is referring to the coag and the cut waveform. What does all that? Does that mean you have feedback? So you've got the cut and the coag, right? If you hit the up button on coag, it'll be 180 watts. If I hit the up button on cut, it would go all the way to 300 watts. So 30 represent the same percentage of potential. So when I'm training residents and I'm training surgeons, I get them to think about this because they've never thought about that number before. They just do it. They do it because that's what they were taught to do, and they've never considered what the unit of measurement was or what the same percentage of volume. Because on the original Electrosurgery generators, you had 2 dials that both went up to 10. So you were using a percentage, 1 to 10, right? 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever. And now we've got these numbers that give you watts. And so now instead of just a dial where you're like, oh, I want 50%. Now you don't have that. But the relationship is still carried over. So I'm telling you a little more than you need to know, because what you're going to need to know about a Bovie is that you're going to toss one end off the field and the circular's going to plug in. Put it up on your field. What's another form of energy that we use on the field? You heard bipolar? And no, I'm not talking about, oh, my mom goes crazy. But, now, bipolar meaning 2 poles, meaning now, instead of a Bovie where that's one end of it and the return electrode is the other end of the current, now I've got an instrument where I've got jaws and I've got anode, cathode, or I've got positive, negative, or whatever. And now that current that was traveling all the way through now is going back and forth between the jaws of the instrument. So I clamp on the tissue, I hit a foot pedal or I hit a button on the device, and I deliver electrical current and I desiccate. You know what desiccate means? Dry out. Okay? You dry out the tissue, and I form a thrombus. What's a thrombus? A clot. So that's how bipolar works. I deliver electricity and I dry out and I create a clot. Okay? So boom, that's bipolar. And there's traditional bipolar, where I just hit a foot pedal and it just delivers electricity until I take my foot off. A Seitzinger or a Kleppinger, those are older instruments. And then there's advanced bipolar. We sell a product called Inseal. Covidien makes a product called Ligasure. There's all kinds of products on the market, and they're advanced bipolar, meaning the generator is reading how much resistance we're getting. So as you dry out the tissue, as there's less water in the tissue, it can't conduct electricity as well, okay? And so as the water goes out, the resistance goes up, meaning the electricity's got to push harder to get through whatever material you're trying to drive it into. And so now the generators can read how much resistance. They can also pulse the electricity. They can, instead of just delivering it constantly, they can many times a second to keep the device from overheating, to deliver it in a way that gets the best tissue effect, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So we've talked about monopolar and bipolar. Those are both electrical. What's another version? Anybody? Kind of going back to mechanical here. Now we're going to talk about ultrasonic energy. This is a blade that has no electricity through it that vibrates at super high frequency. In this case, 55.5 kilohertz, or 55,500 times per second it vibrates. Okay? We make a product called Harmonic. Covidien makes a product called Sonicision. And it is a blade, and that blade travels so fast and vibrates at such a high frequency that what it does is when it comes in contact with tissue, it shakes the cells so hard that they bang into one another. We get what we call cellular friction. We break the hydrogen bonds in that tissue, and we denature the protein, and it turns into a coagulum or a glue. Okay? So that's how that works, but no electricity is delivered to the patient. So it's very safe to use with someone who has a pacemaker or a cochlear implant or a dorsal column stimulator or something fun like that. Okay? I'm going to show you Harmonic, and the reason I'm going to show you Harmonic is because guess what we have to do to set up a Bovie? Plug it in. And the circulator finds a nice big chunk of meat, puts it on the patient, puts a return electrode. What do you have to do as a tech to set up a bipolar device? Throw an end off the field, and the circulator plugs it in. That's it. Harmonic requires a little bit more setup. So here's the generator. This is the generator that's been out for a few years now. It has a button. You don't have to push the button. You just have to touch it. Okay? There are 2 different types of what we call hand pieces. I like to call them cords because I think hand piece is goofy. We have a blue one and we have a gray one. And depending upon the disposable that you attach to it, you'll use the gray one or the blue one. We make several different disposables for Harmonic. However, the 2 most common ones that you will see will be this 36-centimeter device called Harmonic Ace. Got little jaws on the end, okay, kind of like scissors. And you'll see this little guy called Harmonic Focus. Looks like a little hemostat. There's no spring in it. So it literally opens and closes like this. We use this a lot on breast and thyroids, carotids, that kind of fun stuff. And we use this on pretty much all kinds of laparoscopic stuff. You'll see this on everything from kind of relatively small cases like hernias and appies and lap choles, all the way to the big stuff, the colons and the bariatric cases and, you know, other stuff like that. Okay?
again, Jewel? What is
What?
that again? That tool in your hand?
What about it?
The harmonic, what is it called again? The
ACE.
Ace.
ACE. Harmonic ACE.
harmonic ace. Okay.
ACE, absolutely. So remember earlier I was talking about reprocessing? The two most common products you will see reprocessed in the OR that we make will be the trocars, that I'll talk about here in a second, and harmonic. Okay? Now, it is not up to you to decide whether that's a great thing or a bad thing. Just be aware that sometimes if you have a malfunction, it is because the product has been reprocessed. And if it fails, if any of my products fail in the OR, like a stapler, you call me, or you have someone in the OR just call Ethicon directly, and you do what's called a product inquiry. And you tell them the lot number and what happened and what doctor was and what day it was and what happened and did you have to open up the second one? Yes, we did. Okay, great. We'll send you a free replacement, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll send you a shipper kit and you put the bad device in the shipper kit and you send it back off to Ethicon and they take it apart and figure out what went wrong. If the product is reprocessed, it is not my product anymore. This is key. The FDA regulates reprocessors as a remanufacturer of the product. Therefore, if you see the word Stryker printed on the product, which they are legally required to do so you can know that it's theirs and not mine, if you see that, then they need to warranty the product. You need to call the Stryker sustainability rep and have them replace it. Okay? I'm just telling you that so you know what happens. At the same time, it can be a little frustrating because if harmonic fails repeatedly, but it's reprocessed, you start to think, well, harmonic stinks. And harmonic doesn't stink, but you can't tell the difference sometimes, right? So ACE and Focus are the two most common products. They make up probably 90% of all the disposables. We make about 25 different versions of harmonic, but these make up the vast majority of what you will see, which is why I always talk about these. So I'm going to talk about how to assemble them before I actually connect them. ACE will come out of the package with a torque wrench, this guy right here, already loaded on the shaft, okay? I have this old expired handpiece that I like to use because then we can talk about how to assemble it. I want you to hold this straight up. There is a threaded tip here. This is a bolt, basically. This is a nut that we're going to put on the bolt, okay? You'll notice how the handle turns, right? So when I have you assemble it, I want you to turn the shaft. I don't want you to turn the handle. That handle will turn forever and ever and ever, and you'll never get any tighter, or it'll take a long time. So I want you to hold it up like that, settle it in there, and I want you to turn this shaft without your hand getting in the way. I want you to turn it till it's finger tight. And I want you to take that torque wrench, turn it till it clicks twice. And I want you to take it off, and then I'll tell you what the next step is. That is assembly. Disassembly, this little gray knob here, you can just loosen it. Okay? Until it comes apart. Cool? Cool. So I'm going to show you Focus, and then I'm going to pass these around so you can just practice doing it, okay? Now, much like I told you to close a stapler and wait 15 seconds, and then nothing good happens after second 16. 2 clicks, kids. Especially you men. I don't need 3 clicks, 4 clicks. I don't need you doing it real fast. By the way, women never do this. Women never do this. Men do this all the time. Speaking for them, all I can say is it's the way we're made. Men sometimes don't like to use the torque wrench. Women never have a problem with the torque wrench. Men will sit there and go, I don't need a torque wrench. I can get plenty tight. I'm sure you can. However, a torque wrench applies a rotational force. That click is the wrench going past that point and then slipping like a clutch, okay? It is meant to apply the right amount of force, no more. Therefore, I don't need any of you, no matter how much CrossFit you've been doing, to take your dry gloved hands, show me what a big, strong person you are, okay? Because here's what happens. When you do that, when you decide that you know you don't need our sissy torque wrench, then what happens is you twist so hard that guess what happens? You shear off that threaded tip at the end of this. Guess how much these cords cost? much? A little more.
800.
$895 to be specific. They used to cost $3,000. And years ago, we lowered the cost and decided to sell them for much less profit because the signing authority for most OR managers is $1,000. So if one fails, because these are only good for 100 uses and the generator limits that, these are only good for 100 uses. So when this thing finally expires, that means your OR manager, without having to go to a capital committee, can just buy one. Or sterile processing can replace it. Okay? These are $895. So if you and your wisdom decide not to use the torque wrench and break this, that's $895. Okay? So the blue one is the same thing. Harmonic Focus comes with its torque wrench loaded on the end, like so. Let me see if I get that on there right. There we go. Comes out of the package like this. Same thing. It's got a little bit of a longer metal tip on it, but it essentially is the same idea. You turn this until it goes on the cord, until it stops, and then 2 clicks, you're ready to go. Okay? That's it. So I'm going to pass this around here. I'll let you work on that. And I'm going to pass this one around here. Let's see. This one's always harder for me to get on that. I'll start this one on this side so you can do the same thing. And I'll talk about a couple other things here. Okay? Some hospitals like to just peel pack these cords. You know what a peel pack is? You see a peel pack yet?
Yes.
So it's a pack that, yeah, they drop the cord in there after it's been washed. They seal it up and then they sterilize it inside there. It's usually it's a double layer. There's a pack inside of the pack. It's double peel pack. Okay? The way that that you can sterilize, so this is one of the few reusable things we sell are these cords. These cords are reusable. They're good for 100 uses. You can say 100 cases, 100 uses, but a use, and a little plug here, this little plug that goes into the generator here, the plug has a little chip in it. And that chip is what's recording the usage. Once you connect it to the generator and activate the disposable at least 10 times, the odometer rolls over and it records 1 usage. So what that means is, let's say you've gotten all set up and you're ready to go, and all of a sudden the patient starts desatting or something terrible happens, and they're like, we're not going to do the case. You activated 10 times. Still good. You didn't burn a usage. You're great. Okay? Or you're all set up in your room, you're there in your sterile gown, and you're waiting around, and the surgeon comes in, and they're like, we did the endoscope, but the patient had scrambled eggs. We're not doing the case. Patients sometimes they deliberately eat so their surgery will get canceled. Sometimes they ate because they're like, but I didn't eat a lot. I just had a little. They'll cancel it. You know why you can't eat before surgery, right? You can aspirate. Yes, you can aspirate your own vomit and choke and die. And you at least want to be awake when you die, right? So sometimes, but anyway, I say that because the generator will not record a usage. It'll be good, and you'll just have to break down everything and go on your merry way. Some hospitals will sterilize these in a tray. They'll have little different blue boxes or the metal trays or whatever. The reason I mention all this is because when we sell a cord, it comes with something called a test tip, which are these little metal bars. The gray cord has this little short one. The blue cord has this much longer test tip. And here is an old school torque wrench. Okay? This is a torque wrench we used to sell because most of our devices use this. It's a reusable item that you sterilized each time. The test tip was with our old, what we call Gen 04. This is called Generator 11. So Generator 4 used to use these. You will still see them floating around. Most ORs have been smart enough to put these in their own separate peel pack off to the side. But sometimes they like to put everything back in the tray together, and you'll see these. I'm not going to teach you how to use these because you have to have a foot pedal. We do sell a foot pedal that does this. You have to have a foot pedal to use these. These are meant for diagnosing a problem when it goes wrong. Sometimes you'll hook everything up perfectly, and it'll go, and it'll give you an error code of some version. and you won't know. Well, in the good old days, what we did is we would disconnect and reconnect the disposable. And that would tell us, okay, it still failed. Well, now I'll connect a test tip into the cord because there's a little threaded end here that you screw those on. You'd screw those on, you'd use the torque wrench, click like you tested it, and then you hit the foot pedal. And then if this gave you a successful test, you knew that that was the problem. You were eliminating where the problem was. There is not a doctor alive left that I covered in the state of New Mexico who's going to be like, no, take your time, make the test here. Let me know when you're ready. They won't wait. And we don't have time, and nobody knows who these are, and there's almost nobody left except the Ethicon nerd who knows how these work. So if you see them in your trays, know that's what they're there for, and that you'll never use them. You know? If you see this torque wrench will still work with ACE, and it is the torque wrench that you will need to use sometimes if you're doing robotic cases. Although the harmonic attachment for the robot should usually have that torque wrench with it. This is dying out. These are dinosaurs. Okay? People, oh my gosh. Back in the good old days when Loveless had a hospital over on Gibson, they loved to throw these away. They threw these away, like, I don't know, and each hospital has their own weird thing. Presbyterian loves to throw away the harmonic adapter for the generator. These are $100 a piece. And here's the thing, you'll walk in and you'll see, this is a coated metal cable. And you'd walk in where some nurse had taken her trauma scissors and just chewed that sucker out, and you'd see like a little wire, and be like, why? Every generator comes with one. Why would you ever need to take it off? We don't get it. But each hospital has its own weird thing. Presbyterian loves to throw these away. Loveless used to love to throw torque wrenches away. So just be aware that's what those pieces are, okay? I use that to kill some time so that you can make those way around the room. Now, we're going to talk about hooking them up to the generator, okay? So since those are making their way around the room, I'm going to show you. So here's the generator. This little adapter is a magnetic plug, just like a MacBook, okay? You don't have to push hard, just sucks right in, okay? This little adapter just goes into the generator. There's a white dot here on this end, and it matches the white dot that goes in there. And as soon as I plug it in, it starts to recognize that there is a gray cord, okay? I'm going to hook up this guy here. As soon as it makes contact, it starts identifying the instrument. Okay, and I am going to use this old school torque wrench while that other one makes its way around the room. Now, you have to, with almost all the devices that are out there, our newest generation of harmonic that nobody in the state has bought yet, no longer requires this little dance that we do, okay? Now it's just plug and play. You just literally plug it in and boop, and it goes. It's ready to go. No testing, no nothing. Harmonic, because it's got this mechanical connection, this screw, bolt, cord thing we've got going on, you have to test it. You want these shears to be open, and there's two buttons on the front that say max and min. You can hit either one of them. That puts it through a test sequence. Happy tone, and it says ACE +7 demo. Well, this is a harmonic ACE +7 demo. Cool. It'll say 3 and 5. Harmonic has 5 power settings. Okay? So unlike the Bovie, where we were talking about the number of watts of electricity, here the power setting refers to how far that blade travels in and out when it's activated. Okay? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So it's still traveling 55,500 times a second, that active blade, but we can make it go a little further, or we can make it go a little shorter, depending on what these numbers say. Now, 5 is max. Max is always max, okay? But this number over here, this 3, we can adjust that up and down with this touch screen. I'm going to try to angle it a little bit so it's not easy to see it. So you can angle it up or down, but it defaults to 3 and 5. The reason there is a min and a max button here is sometimes we want to be biased towards hemostasis, a lower number. The blade is not traveling as far. It tends to dwell on the tissue a little longer. It will eventually cut through the tissue, it'll just take longer. But that gives us a more hemostatic outcome as opposed to 5 when we hit the max button. And that's more biased towards cutting and transecting. We're not as worried about vasculature. Maybe that's mesentery, maybe that's adhesions, something like that, okay? So, without looking at the generator, I can hit the max button. It's got a nice fast tone. Min has a slower tone. Also, the max button has little beepies on it, so I can feel that it's max, okay? So as a doctor, I don't have to look down at the device. I can either hit this button and feel the bumps and know that that's the max button, or I can hear the faster tone and know that that's max, okay? Hey, Jules, what's that green button on the side for? Ah, I'm glad you asked. That is advanced hemostasis. Most bipolar devices, in fact, every bipolar electrical device on the market is indicated to seal up to a 7-millimeter vessel. That is a big pipe. Just to give you some idea, the shaft of this instrument is 5.5 millimeters in diameter, which means a bipolar device can take something bigger than this. You clamp it, seal it, you're done. Harmonic, with either the min or the maximum setting, is indicated for a 5-millimeter vessel, so just about the size of this shaft. With advanced hemostasis, it's a cute little tune, isn't it? With that sound, that allows us to now use mechanical energy to take up to a 7-millimeter vessel. Okay? The reason that's a big deal is because when I hit that button, I'm manipulating the frequency and the excursion of the blade. It's got its own little algorithm when I do that, and it can only work when the device is closed. I have to completely close around that vessel before I hit that button, and I have to let the cycle complete. Okay? But open, I can hit it, which is cool, because it means I can score with this. I don't have to always be clamped around something. I can use it like a drill. Cool? Same thing, focus is indicated for 5-millimeter vessels, and as you can see, it's got cute little buttons on it, and it's for much finer and delicate surgery. I want you all to arise and come to the front of the room again. Remember to leave a little tunnel for Sean there, just in case. Okay.
Thank you.
I use oranges because they smell better when we apply energy to them. Okay? Now, when I activate the device, if you look closely, it does not appear that anything is happening, does it? Like a close-up magician. Right? You see I have no sleeves, right? Okay. But when I apply it to the orange, it just cuts right through. You can hear that little hissing, you can see the steam. Okay? And it just scores in there, and you'll see a little bit of steam. Now, it is like a scalpel. You have to apply pressure. Now, the harder you press with harmonic, the faster it works. Okay? It's just like if I stretch a rubber band and cut it, it'll go flying across the room. But if I leave that rubber band nice and limp and I cut it, it just falls. Okay? Because when I stretch a rubber band, just like we were talking earlier about mechanical energy, when I stretch a rubber band, there's energy stored in that rubber band. It's under tension. So when I put more energy into the tissue by stretching on it, harmonic will cut faster. But when it cuts faster, it will also be less hemostatic. So harmonic, unlike electricity, where we can just go, we can just burn it. Harmonic, we have to be cautious. We have to be cautious of how much tension we're applying on the tissue and how hard we're pushing. It will work faster with more force, but it will also be less hemostatic. Dope? So, I want you to, you've all practiced connecting and disconnecting it, right? Okay? If you get an error message, let's see if we can fake it into an error message here. Yeah, I got to at least connect it a little bit. So it was a little bit loose. It actually got a little confusing. It says relax pressure on blade. Okay. But the bottom line is sometimes you'll see it's a tighten assembly. Sometimes you'll see other messages. But it'll give you, now with our old generators, we used to just have a real simple cheese ball little LCD screen. It would say error code 5, whatever error code 5 was. Now it gives you a nice plain, text message here, relax pressure on blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten that back up. Yeah, I know. It'll keep reminding you until you do something about it. Some of the error messages that you can get with harmonic will have a little thing down here that says next or okay. somebody non-sterile, your circulator, needs to go and touch that before you can continue, okay? And all I have to do is reactivate it and I'm good to go, okay? But that's an example of an error message you can get. When you hear that, that sound, something's not right. So it's telling you, look at me. Now, when I first connect this, if I have gotten down to 10 uses remaining or less, it will say 10 uses remaining. Okay, remember what a usage is? Connecting it and activating it at least 10 times. So after we get to that point, it'll say 10 uses remaining. Now, it'll only display that for about 3 or 4 seconds when you first connect the cord. So you need to be paying attention. And again, people are so used to harmonic, it's a pretty common item to see in cases. They just plug it in and they look away. But it'll do that for 9 uses remaining, 8 uses remaining, 7, on down until it'll finally say no uses remaining. When it says no uses remaining, it's not like, but I'll let you do it this time. It's no uses remaining. You will have to take this and take it off your field and throw it away. Now, these are $895, right? Mm-hmm. There are companies out there that will attempt to tell you, they'll tell your SPD head, sterile processing and decontamination, they'll tell them, hey, you know, for $300 we can refurbish that cord and it'll be good to go. And what they do is they reprogram the EEPROM or the chip in here, and it's like rolling back the odometer on a car, kind of being shady. And it'll trick the generator into thinking that this is a new cord. The problem is, here's why harmonic works. Here's why you can use mechanical energy on a patient, and that is because there's electricity right up to about here. Then there's a stack of ceramic tiles. They're about the size of an aspirin, and there's about 4 or 5 of them all joined together. They're a piezoelectric ceramic tile. And when electricity hits it, they vibrate at a very specific frequency. So that electricity hitting those ceramic tiles vibrates, and those ceramics are attached to this long bar, which ends in this active blade. The problem is not that we're trying to be cheese balls and charge you $900 over and over and over. The problem is that these ceramics fatigue and they wear out. Okay, just like brake pads on a car, just like a drive shaft, just like your knife gets dull, just like lots of things in life don't perform the way they did brand new. And those ceramic tiles wear out. They can't crack into here and replace those. Sometimes they'll replace the cord. As if you feel this one, you'll feel it's real slick and real smooth. You can always tell a refurbished cord because the cord they use is kind of sticky and rubbery, like a rubber wire that you would go buy at a hardware store. And there's a serial number on the end of this. When I call in that serial number, it will say San Juan Regional Medical Center bought that in February of 2017. And what's funny is with certain systems like Presbyterian or Loveless, where there's multiple hospitals as part of a system, I, in my career, will look at it. And by the way, these serial numbers start with a letter. This one starts with a J. We're on like X or something now. Well, this is my demo. This is the one I've been carrying around for years. So if I see a letter out of sequence, I'm like, so I can tell immediately. Now, sometimes hospitals buy a whole bunch of cords at one time, and then they just use them as they need them. Our warranty on these, because there's a 90-day warranty, a 6-month warranty on these. The warranty is from the date you buy it. So if you decide to buy 6 of them and stick them on a shelf, I can't help you with that. Your warranty is from the day you buy it. Anyway, they'll attempt to sell you these refurbished for $300. Give me your cord, I'll give it back to you. You're wasting your money because you still don't get these parts replaced. So yeah, you got your cord back and you spent $300, and guess what? The next time it's in the room, you still got about 50-50 odds that it won't work. Plus, harmonic is always trying to be efficient. It's like when you're on the road and you're steering, right? You're not making wild steering inputs, right? You're just making little tiny inputs to keep the car on the road, right? And that's what harmonic, that's what the generator's doing all the time. It's always trying to keep it running at 55,500 cycles per second. It's trying to keep that blade traveling the right. It's measuring how hard it's having to work. This generator can actually do kind of a lot of amazing stuff to keep this guy working within that window of efficiency. It's what we call seeking resonance. It's always looking to deliver a certain waveform, okay? If you get a refurbished cord back, it has to work very hard, okay? So I'd make all kinds of crazy engine analogies. You know what crankshaft input is, right?
Yeah, it's the preload on the bearings for crankshaft.
Well, and it's also the amount that it moves it fore and aft. And if you don't shim up your crank, you'll stick a piston in sideways. I did that with the first engine I ever rebuilt. So anyway, so here we go. I want you to, because basically you've seen how to connect and disconnect it. You've seen how to get an error code and how to get out of it. If you repeatedly get an error message and you've disconnected and reconnected this and you've done your best, I tried really hard, Jewel, I promise. The weak link is usually the cord, okay? Before you open up another $400 disposable, open up another cord. And if that fixes the problem, go on your merry way, and it didn't cost you anything except sterilizing a cord again. If during the process in the room you want to know, you're like, well, maybe this one's getting old and worn out, you can then go into that settings menu. I'm going to show you here. There's a little gear icon here down in the corner. You press settings. You scroll down. You go to system information. And this says that there are 88 uses remaining on this cord. So as long as it's not being used and your circulator is cooperative, they can go over and tell you within the surgery how many uses remaining. Because you might say, maybe this one's getting ready to crap out on us. Or we just bought this one. Well, I don't know why we're having problems. And if you have a problem child, you can call me or you can call whoever your rep is and say, and they'll call it in and they'll call in that serial number and they'll say, oh yeah, it looks like you're still under warranty. And they can just get it replaced for you. Okay? The reason I'm burdening you with all this information is it's usually you guys who see the stuff because you're the ones who pop open those sets every time. You're the ones who are going to pop open a Nissen set and go, these are the same dull scissors that I pulled out last time and I told them not to put back in the set. I promise you, you're going to get that kind of sixth sense. You're going to open up some weird lap set or some weird retractor. You're going to be like, this is the Richardson that has the crappy clamps that don't work, you know, whatever, and you're going to get that. You're going to notice the same thing with this stuff. You're going to be like, wait a minute. That's the cord that I pulled out from the thing with the stuff in the place with the guy last time. So, right? So you'll develop that. I'm telling you this because you're the ones who are going to have a lot of contact with all of the instruments and all of the products. It's like they don't know I'm me. Well, that's a good magnet. All right, so come over here and operate on the orange and get a feel for how it works. Okay, let me make sure I tested it here. Put it back together. And I'm so sorry, Sean. Just pretend that you're getting to do this too.
Exactly.
There you go. Now this is a short open version. This is a 23 centimeter version. There's your patient. So you close it and there's your activation buttons up there, okay? No. There you go, buddy. You don't want to close it. And here's the thing. He's got no tissue in the jaws of his instrument, right? Bad talk. Because here's the thing. That blade is moving back and forth. It's just like you rubbing your hands together in the winter. So guess what?
It's not just getting hot.
It's not just getting hot, it's friction. This is a frictional heater. We're not only rubbing on that tissue and creating that vibration.
I get it, but
okay?
Yeah.
So if you close that and there's nothing in there, all that blade is doing is rubbing on this Teflon pad. You're eventually going to turn that Teflon pad into a canoe and you're eventually going to split it in two. Okay? So just for our purposes, I want you to just kind of practice drilling and scoring the stuff that I was doing. You're going to need that finger.
Without the advanced hemostasis, right? That's what it was.
The green button.
You can still sear.
Seal.
Oh, seal when it's open.
Oh, no, you can activate it.
Gray buttons, yeah.
Remember, don't close it. There's no tissue in the jaws. All I want you to do right now is use that finger. I want you to press that button. Yeah, see, it just slips right in. See a little plume of steam there? Now work on scoring back towards yourself. An orange rind doesn't have a lot of water in it, so it can be, but you hear a little sizzle there? Now the reason I'm having you score back towards yourself is because as you push away, you have a tendency to do that. It's bad for patients. You lose points for that. So once you're satisfied, let somebody else operate on the orange. And then you're good. Now sometimes, like on a liver, the technique that we'll teach is called crush clamp. So we'll do this. We'll say, drill into the liver, and then close. Okay, so you can, this is really multifunctional. All surfaces of this are active. So I can use that blunt, flat side like that to spot coagulate. And the longer I leave it there, eventually I can start to get a little brown there, right? A little sear. Smell that. So imagine this was a chicken breast. That really gunks up these instruments. But yeah, that's how you use it. So you can drill and make otomies, which is nice.
A what?
Make otomies. Yep, make an otomy. There you go.
Cool.
So play with that, and then we'll be done with energy.
Good.
Hey, what's up? No, we're still in the middle of harmonic. Yeah, I just started at noon. What's up? Is it important? Is it big? Okay. No, I just saw the calls coming through. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I'm supposed to be heading to Cruces in the morning, so I'll try to, if it's not too late and you want me to call you, I'll call you when I hit the road. You know, let me look at my phone and see if Tammy emailed me back, because I emailed her yesterday morning because she was supposed to be back from vacation yesterday, and I'll see, because yeah, we need to know. It's getting a little tense at this point. God, let me check. Tell you what, let me check my emails, and if I have no response from her, then I'll text you real quick. Thank you, Gina. Bye. Oh my God, look at all these stupid text messages.
Orange smells good.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go.
If you're using max or minimum. That is way cool.
All these fun little toys.
Yeah.
I hate text messaging sometimes as a rep, because it's created this expectation that I'm always available.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, "Oh, what, you're doing something?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm right in the middle of something."
Yeah. I work.
Well, and it's just, yeah. I mean, I have days where, you know, I was doing a presentation to people who do manufacturing for us, and I said, "You guys live in a world of order. I live in a world of chaos. I can wake up thinking I'm going to do something.
Completely changes, yeah.
Plans are merely a suggestion."
Yeah.
How hot does it get?
I love questions like that.
It's gonna get way hot,
Yeah.
'cause it's just like going through that orange like butter.
Yeah, so here's the thing. It's variable. It heats up as a function of time. The longer I activate it, the hotter it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Blonde, workout, athleisure. What's your name again? Colleen. So, come here. Let me see this for a second. I want to try to force it to do something real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. It's right over there. I'm sorry. Don't mind me. Bring it to me. Hang over here. Let me see if I can force it to do something. Try it on the speaker. Did you hear the tone change just now?
Mm-hmm.
So what that is doing is that is what we call adaptive tissue technology, which is a fancy way of saying heat management. So when I go in there and I close it, what that's saying is, see, with electrical devices, remember I told you we measure electrical impedance, and that's measured in ohms, meaning how much harder, like how much resistance are we getting to the electricity that we're trying to push through a material, okay? Now with this generator, starting with this, the previous generation of this, we started to be able to measure how hard was that blade having to work to still move 55,500 times a second. And that friction probably meant that the tissue was already divided, or it was getting close to being divided. So now I had a very thin layer in there, so I was getting more friction from that blade rubbing on what we call the clamp arm, okay? And so now we give the doctors a tone. So when that pitch changes, what that means is I'm having to work a lot harder to keep moving, which is one indicator that the tissue is divided, because sometimes they will bury the tips of this down into some fat or some adhesions, and they always want to be able to see where they're working, but sometimes what happens is a bunch of fat and stuff, and they're just kind of reaching in there, and they can't really see the tissue like pop apart, like separate, and you'll know what I'm talking about when you start to get into cases. And they don't see that, and so they're kind of like, and so that tone change tells them it's heating up. Because if you watch a graph, you'll see harmonic heating up, and then if you keep activating it, that little graph starts to really climb and peak. Okay, so now typically, if I quote a thermal spread to a surgeon, not necessarily how hot that blade has gotten, but how far that heat is traveling, what's the footprint of the heat of that blade, I'll typically say harmonic ACE, starting with ACE plus, this is now ACE plus 7, has a lateral thermal spread, meaning the spread to either side of 1.7 millimeters. That's based on 10 seconds of activation. You see how fast it goes through the orange? Like that long? It doesn't really need, that's an orange, but it doesn't really need that long to get through tissue. Typically, you'll never see it activated for more than 4 or 5 seconds. But sometimes, like in a mastectomy, where they start to take the entire breast off the pectoralis, and the docs get really confident with that harmonic focus, and they just start going beep, 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 and they just keep going. And that heat is building. Now, some of that, sometimes they can literally reach over to like a wet ray tag and go like that, and take a lot of the heat out of that device. But the heat increases as a function of time, okay? Typically about 0.1 millimeters for each second is what I'm getting. So over 10 seconds, I tend to get about 1.5, 1.7 millimeters. The reason I can be that accurate is what we had to submit to the FDA, was we had to seal tissue, and we had to do tissue stains, which you call histology, where you do a little slide, and you look for where's the margin of cellular change, where do I see the collagen change, where it's irreversible tissue damage, and that's where the heat is going to, okay? Electricity is a little funkier, like with a Bovie or a bipolar, because electricity is desiccating and drying out the tissue. It's taking water volume out of the tissue. And what's happening is as you take water out of the place where you put it, now the electricity is looking for a path of least resistance. So now to travel from literally this top jaw to this bottom jaw, the tissue starts to, the electricity has to bloom outward because it has to travel out to find a way to reconnect to the other electrode. So with the bipolar, you'll sometimes see that blanching spread, especially if it's an old school bipolar. I know I'm telling you way more than you were probably asking.
I understand.
But it heats up as you activate it longer. Right. Now, at about 100 Celsius. Now, what happens at 100 Celsius? Yes, 100 Celsius is equivalent to 212 Fahrenheit, and that is the temperature at which water boils. Okay? So at 100 Celsius is where we see that cellular change, that tissue change. And then about 150 Celsius is where we start to see carbonization and irreversible tissue damage. Okay? So harmonic gets hot. Harmonic gets up around 150 or so. But the tip of a bovie, depending on the setting, you can generate temperatures upwards of 400 with a bovie. So that's what's going on with surgical energy. Anybody else? Anybody still need to play with it? There you go. Yeah, operate on the orange. Like I say, I get real, so tell me stuff.
Oh, okay.
Lower like
Okay.
right now. So I take your torque wrench off.
More donuts, guys.
And then that light right now, that's light on there, you're gonna spin that camera. Or excuse me.
So things moving.
Yeah, I'm ready to get off steam there. That's correct. Because the maximum distance of that blade is 66 microns, which is about the width of a hair. So that's why you can't really see it.
That's crazy.
I mean, obviously, with my superpowers, I can see it slow mo, but.
You turn sideways here.
Now, the kind of plume that you have on there, is that about the same tissue?
Excuse me.
Typically, that is steam. Typically, what you see with it.
Will you turn sideways so I can see? Thank you. Can I see you do that?
Typically, what you see with a bovie is smoke.
So there's like the little
So with a bovie, you get
triggers right
smoke,
there.
that's steam.
That is cool.
Would you be that much smoke or is there less?
Depends on how hard you're hitting it.
Oh, wow.
Here's what's interesting.
crazy.
That is
There are
cool.
starting to be some national standards around smoke in the OR. So you see people put an inline smoke evacuator for the belly, like when you're doing laparoscopic surgery. But the smoke we're concerned about is smoke that's being aerosolized into the air. A single gram of vaporized tissue is equivalent to like half a pack of cigarettes. So they are now making Bovie pens that have like a little suction tubing built into them, a little suction pen. Obviously, that's an opportunity for companies like us because we have a monopolar division. We just bought Megadyne this year. An evacuation pen is more expensive. Most ORs are like, we don't want to do it. Okay, that's fine. But there will start to be probably some occupational health standards around it. I'm going to hit this next section really fast because it's 3 o'clock and I have not shut up for 3 hours. So, the next 2 sections are very, very easy. There are a few different ways we can get access to the belly. How are they? I'm talking about laparoscopically. I'm not talking about laparotomy. I'm talking about laparoscopically. Do you know the different ways we get access to the belly? So we can stick a camera in and look around?
Belly button.
Well, so what is a belly button incision called? What's the technical term for the belly button? The umbilicus. Yes. So there is what's called an open technique. This is a Hassan trocar. It has a blunt tip on it. And you do what's called direct or open visualization for Hassan. You make an incision. I'm getting messy. You make an incision in the umbilicus. By the way, why do we like to make an incision in the umbilicus? Because when we sew it up, it disappears. Right? You know? Swimsuit season's right around the corner. Hold my incision high in there. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get in the water, but it's still a little cute. Okay? So, do an open or direct visualization. So in that case, they make an incision and they get direct visualization. So they'll use a couple of little S retractors or an Army Navy. They'll put a couple of stay sutures in there and they'll look. And when they see the bowel, they can see with their eyeballs. They will then place this trocar, this Hassan trocar. And there's this little weird little slidey thing, this little tapered cone. It's got little round doohickeys, little capstans on the side. So when they place it in there, they will then wrap those stay sutures around, and that'll hold this trocar in place. They'll pull out this obturator, and they can put their camera in, and then they'll be able to look around while they place the rest of their ports. Now, that's for initial entry, okay? And this will be parked in the umbilicus, and that'll usually be a primary port for the camera, okay? However, there's another way. Do you know what a Verus needle is? This is a Verus needle. There are various types. This is, I think, 120 millimeters. I think we also make 150 millimeters. This is a very simple, low-tech one. What happens is they'll take a towel clamp or just their hand and they'll pick up on the belly and they'll pop this through and they'll feel their way through. And when they feel that final little bit of resistance, which is the peritoneum, give way, they're like, I'm in. This is hollow. This is just basically like a hypodermic. So what they do is they pop this in and then they attach their insufflation. You know what insufflation is? Okay, that's how we insufflate or blow up the belly. And we blow up the belly, and so they attach tubing directly to this, and it through a little tiny straw, and we fill up the belly, okay, with gas to blow it up. And then once the belly is nice and big, then I can put in my other ports and not be as worried about sticking bowel or something. Okay. A lot of surgeons are trained to do a Verus needle. Okay. There's even a fancy Verus needle that has like a little red ball in here, and you put a little bit of saline in there, so that when you pop it through, the saline will drop out the end and the ball will drop, and that'll tell you that you're in safely. Super cool, huh? Mm-hmm. Anyway, some surgeons train on that. Now, there is optical entry, where we stick a camera into the top to the obturator of the trocar, put the camera in, it's got a clear tip, and then looking at the monitor, I've made a little stab incision, usually with like an 11 blade or a little tiny skin knife, and I go and I crank this in with the camera, and I'm watching it, and I'm seeing fat and fascia and muscle and peritoneum, and whoop, there I am, I'm in. Then I pull out the camera, I pull this out, I put my camera back in and place the rest of my ports.
What was that other piece for?
This,
Oh, just
the pokey part,
punch.
the pokey part, yes, the obturator, that kind of, and there's little fins on the side, you can feel them, there's two little fins, they move like this. So when we ask them to do that, this is called a bladeless trocar. So when they put it in, we don't want them bouncing, like we don't want them pushing like this. We just want them to apply a gentle pressure and let the tip of the trocar do the work, and I swear to God, it'll work. Okay, and they're in. So we've talked about open/direct with a Hassan. We've talked about a Verus needle. We've talked about optical entry. There is a final form of entry, and it's just blind. I have one or two surgeons who will literally grab a big wad of the abdomen, and they'll kind of go at an angle, and they'll just pop the first trocar in before they put their camera in. So they'll do that. You can also, for subsequent ports, this is not for initial entry, but we make bladed trocars. I'll talk about that in a minute. So, of those four methods, open, Verus needle, optical, blind, which do you think is the safest? How many vote for open or Hassan? The one where you have to see the bowel, you do the incision before you stick the trocar in. How many vote for Hassan or open? You? Okay. How many vote for the Verus needle? There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes for that. 6, 7. Oh my goodness. How many vote for the optical entry? Got a few takers. How many vote for blind? Which do you think is really the safest way? Obviously, we got the most votes for Verus needle. It's a bit of a trick question.
Visual.
The answer is the one that they're the most comfortable with. Okay? I had a doctor come to me several years ago. He practices in Colorado. I was sitting and waiting for a case there in Albuquerque. He said, hey, Jules. I said, yeah, what's up? And he said, I just watched a surgeon just put the trocar, boom, just wait. And I said, oh, you watched Dr. Perez. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, you saw Dr. Perez put it in his trocar. He goes, yeah. Am I supposed to be doing that? Is that like what all the kids are doing now? And I said, Dr. Lovato, I said, what do you like to do? And he goes, I like to use Verus needle. And I said, how long have you used the Verus needle? Since residency. How many cases do you think you've used the Verus needle? 3,000? He goes, at least. I said, do you like the Verus needle? Yeah. You know how to use the Verus needle? Yeah. I said, well, that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be doing. Because you know you've done it so many times. One thing I'm very conscious of as a rep is that when I come up with any of this junk and I show up and I'm like, hey, doc, I got this thing. What a rep is really saying is, you know that thing that you do over and over and over and works really well for you? I'd like you to do something different. if more reps thought that way, they would probably have better relationships, and you wouldn't have reps with a reputation of just trying to sell stuff. That's my opinion. Now, there is no safest method. I will say I think optical is awesome because they see the layers, they see the tissue, they immediately get in. The Veris needle is still blind. It's a tiny, tiny tip, but it's still blind. Okay, you're not seeing anything. I love the optical method. That's my personal favorite as a rep. Plus, I get to watch TV, right? Get to see what's happening. So that's it about trocars. I'm going to give you a quick review. Trocars come in a few common sizes. The most common ones you're going to see are 5 and 12. You've got to have a 12 for a stapler. Okay. We make 11s, but almost nobody buys them. And most of the work I've done over the last several years is to get ORs to stop buying 11s. Okay, because you can't get a stapler through it. It's only 1 millimeter difference, and they can save a lot of money by going to 5s and 12s. The bigger scopes tend to give more light and a better picture, so they'll tend to want to put a stapler in the camera through this one, and they'll use a 5 for all their working towards, all their graspers and all that other stuff. Plus, if it's a gallbladder or an oophorectomy where they got to take out an ovary or something like that, there's going to be a specimen, and they'll need to put a retrieval bag, and that's 10 millimeters, so they'll need a bigger port to pull that out, okay? So you see 5s and 12s, most common, okay? Now, if I'm doing a gallbladder, I'm probably going to put 112, 5, 5, 5, okay? Because I got to have a place to put my scope, I got to have a place to pull the gallbladder out, but everything else is just going to be a grasper or a cholangiogram, you know, whatever, catheter or whatever. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. So if I've got to put in 3 5s, why would I need the obturator, the pokey part, when all I really need is a cannula? I just need the tube. Cannula is the fancy word for tube. Obturator is the fancy word for the pokey part, okay? So, what most hospitals will have is sleeves. They'll have extra cannulas. And then you as the tech will then come along and you'll have 1 of these and 2 more of these. And you'll take that, you'll load it back up, hand it to the doctor, they'll give you back this part, you'll put it in the next sleeve, because that's all they need this for, okay? Sometimes they'll ask you for this separate, because they're going to put in a liver retractor, and they just need to make a hole. And they'll literally use this by itself, and then they'll put their liver retractor, okay? Any questions about that? There's a few controls you need to know about. There's a stopcock on the side here, a little valve, so they can attach their insufflation. One trocar will have it attached, the other ones all need to be closed, or else you're here. And the melody won't stay filled up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so one's open, which is sticking out, the rest are closed. There's a little pinchy things here to take this apart. There's this little guy to lock the camera in place. Some folks want the camera to rotate in the trocar, some want the camera to rotate with the trocar, okay? On the bigger diameters, there's a little switch on the side. Maybe a needle, maybe a piece of tissue, something gets caught. They can pop the cap off the trocar. There's 2 seals. There's a seal in the cap. There's another seal inside here, so they can take that off without losing insufflation, okay? And you'd be like, oh crap, there's the needle, you know, pull it out. Just so you as the tech remember that there's a cap. These are Excel trocars. These are Ethicons. Applied makes trocars. Covidien makes trocars. Not as good as ours, but everybody makes trocars, okay? You will sometimes see less common sizes, like a 15. You will see 15s. Generally, you'll see a 15 in like a gastric sleeve. I'm a bariatric rep. That's my day job. So I spend a lot of time in bariatric cases, and I'll see that they'll use this big port because then they'll pull the gastric remnant out of that port because it's a bigger hole. So we always use a 15 with that. We make them very short, like a ventral hernia. We also make very long trocars, 150 millimeter cannulas. Typically, you'll see this in bariatric cases where you have a pick out abdominal wall. You'll also see it in robotic cases because the robot has to clamp onto the trocar, and that uses up a certain amount of usable length. So with the trocar clamped on, and you still need to get it into the patient, they'll use an extra long trocar just for that. Okay? What do you think the difference is between a trocar of ours that has a white cap and a black cap? Stormtrooper, Darth Vader.
Can we
No.
say this?
No.
I was gonna say good.
We started coloring these. The only difference you'd have to be the ethicon to care about this. The only thing that's different is if you look in the black one, there's a little white ring here, and it's a special feature we designed so that as you pass the camera, as you pass the scope back through the trocar, it wicks fluid off the tip of the trocar using capillary action. So you pass it nice and slow, and almost nobody buys these because they cost extra. So what they do is they do this, and you guys use Q-tips a lot. We'll hear them referred to as Texas Q-tips or Q-tip or whatever. Covidien sells a little thing that's a scope worm that looks like R2-D2, and then it's got like this little double-ended foam-looking thing that's really big for wiping out trocars because they get blood and they get fluid in them, okay? There are bladed trocars. They literally have a blade in them. They tend to be kind of an older school method. And so what happens is you as the tech, your only job is this little red switch on the side, is to press that down. And what that does is that engages the little safety. So what happens is when they go to start pushing on the belly, it'll push back this yellow shield and expose the blade. And then once there's no more pressure on that yellow part, like that, that'll snap into place. The shield will cover that blade, and they'll be able to pull out the pokey part, okay?
How come you don't use that?
Huh?
That just seems like really.
It makes it larger fit. Well, I don't know. There's a scalpel grade blade on the end of this. Depending on how hard they push and how fast they go. Now it cuts through the tissue really nice. It doesn't require so much force. And I never want to see a surgeon twist with them. You should just push straight in, one smooth motion, boom, it goes through all that tissue. You'll see GYNs use these still. So let's say you've had 3 kids, 3 deliveries, 3 C-sections, and your belly is concrete because you got a lot of scar tissue, you got a lot of incisions. A bladed trocar is nice for that. So some surgeons will still use a bladed trocar for initial. Because it just cuts through.
Like less tissue damage.
It makes actually these make a bigger fascial defect. These bladeless trocars, because your fascia tends to have like crossed fibers, and so the bladeless trocar kind of pushes those out of the way, whereas the blade cuts through them. And so a bladeless trocar kind of tends to sort of pushes the fibers apart. When it comes out, they sort of reapproximate. And the 5mm bladeless trocars make such a small defect that we don't advise closing them. In fact, you would have to make the incision larger just to close that port.
Wow.
I only advise surgeons to close their 12mm ports. Last thing I'm going to talk about, and then you're going to be done for the day, is clips. Now, I brought 3 clip appliers here. These are the laparoscopic ones. We make open appliers. We make a reusable metal one, and you'll have to load the clips onto a little block. It's a clip. It's a little metal thing. You squeeze it, you smash it onto a blood vessel or whatever. It is not a complicated thing. Again, as techs, there is something that you will do that no one else in the room will have to pay attention to. The larger diameter clip appliers, this is what we call a medium large clip. This is called this is a large clip, so this requires a 12mm trocar. This is more like a 10. These are big honking clips. When you first take them out of the package, they will be empty, and you have to pump them once to put a clip in the jaws. Now, here's what's interesting. This little guy that's only 5mm in diameter and this one that's 10 deliver the same size clip. This one, the jaws are a little wider, but when this clip is squeezed closed, it is 8.8mm long with both of them. So golly gee whiz, if I can get a clip through a tinier port, why would I ever use this? Anybody?
Bigger, like.
Does have a larger aperture, it has a larger opening, but it's going to end up giving you the same amount of holding power. The problem is that, not the problem, the challenge is that in order for this one to fit through a trocar, the jaws collapse. So they squeeze shut, they're on a spring. So as you push it through the trocars, the jaws close and then they open back up, which means that every time you fire this one, a clip comes into the jaws and then squeezes. This one, the clip's just always there. It just comes out. And it's just there waiting. And so you just put it through. And this one, because it's bigger, it's stronger. Surgeons will literally like crank on tissue and be like, I can just get it right there. Boom, and they'll fire the clip. Okay? If you want, you're welcome to come up here, fire a clip, see what it's like. Okay? Because I've got Like I have these, this cute little lung with a little attachment sticking out of it, and you can. Oh, I think this one's empty. Oh no, this one was brand new.
How many clips are in it?
There's 20 in here. There's 20 in here. There's 15 in this one because this one it's bigger, so they can bunch up. This one they're literally lined up one behind the other. They have little ridges kind of cut into the inside surface, so it's like it's like the tread of a tire, so that they don't slide up and down or pull off. That's it. That's everything I got for you. So, yeah, if you want to see that and see how much force that takes. Now, typically what we'll advise is we'll ask them to squeeze this, so click, click, click slowly.
And that's not even everything that you
Click, click, click. Oh, I didn't tell you to keep going.
Excuse me.
Okay, now, wait till you see the clip come out. So click, click, click. See it come out.
Okay.
All right, get it out there. So now, see how it's ready? Now you put it around the structure. Because the problem is if you try to, go ahead, Bart. The problem is
Where it still holds the 15 seconds?
no, that's the clip's job is to do this. The reason with this clip plier that I want you to load it first is if you try to shove it onto the tissue, that clip's now trying to come out in full. Whereas this one, it's just waiting in the wind. It's just waiting. See how it's already there?
When you come to visit, we'll show you the different clips.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
I think he's done. I'll send you an email a little
Yeah,
bit
see how
later.
this is just a clip waiting there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe this one's in.
Okay,
Oops, I think this one's
but I want to catch up.
this one's trashed. Throw that away.
I won't be in class tomorrow with Zoom. I can
See
just,
how, then there's a
Oh,
clip,
yeah.
there's a clip there, let me see how this one goes.
A clip just came out.
Yeah, no
Man,
class
fixed it.
tomorrow.
There you go.
Okay. Okay.
thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Can I just see the clips?
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Joe.
That's one that's not a piece of tissue.
Mhm.